in Europe, if approved, if Starmer bows down to Beijing, as these protesters are saying. Behind me you can see nobody wants this.
No repression at borders! We know that we have to stand up to the abuses of China. And what worries me is that we have a government right now that seems to be scared of China.
What are you doing here at the protest? That's an interesting sign you've got there. Clearly you're not a fan of our Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Why is that?
He's kowtowing to the Chinese government, right? A dictator regime.
Robert Jenrick defected to Reform yesterday. He called the Conservative Party and Kemi Badenoch a leader with no backbone. She's obviously shown up here today and done a speech. It's kind of unprecedented to have that sort of flagrant support. What did you think about her speech and her backing this?
I think any party backing our cause, like going against the building of the embassy, I'd say we welcome them.
Why are you here today?
So I'm Tibetan and I'm here to oppose the Chinese mega embassy being built here. Unfortunately, we think the UK government might allow this to happen, and I think it sends the wrong message to people who have been oppressed by the Chinese government, who are still being continuously oppressed in free countries. There are lots of Chinese decisions which are being followed by Chinese police states.
Now, we know that there are plainclothes Chinese policemen potentially in the crowd, so a lot of them want to stay anonymous, which is very understandable. Why are you here today?
Because it's very simple. It's no mega embassy, and this is absolutely unacceptable because, you know, this is a very peak area, and I don't think any one of the country they will have choose one of the peak area, prime area, and make it to their one of the, I think it's the biggest embassy in Europe. So this is absolutely unacceptable.
This government is engaging with China confidently and pragmatically and challenging them where we need to. Because from
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side, this is Talk.
⅓, top of the morning. This is Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle all of this week, and a packed show we have for you. Breaking this morning, £500,000 worth of compensation for migrants who successfully sued the UK government for taking their phones when they arrived in Dover. Yes, folks, you heard that right. These are people that have entered the country illegally. They've paid criminals to get on a dinghy to cross the channel in part of what is a national security, economic and humanitarian disaster. They've crossed the channel, they've broken into the country. We take their mobile phones. They now sue us. £500,000, but that, folks, is a drop in the ocean, as many more millions of quid are expected to go to migrants who are claiming against European human rights laws. You couldn't make it up. Welcome to Broken Britain. Also this morning, in another shocking development for the economy, the government's workers' rights reforms have pushed a third of employers to cut hiring. So is Britain on the brink of an unemployment surge? I'll be asking one of the country's top entrepreneurs. And what about this at 6:04 in the morning? Are we now stuck with Starmer? Is that it? As the Labour Party cannot support any of the key leadership candidates. They won't reunite behind any one of them. So it could be Keir for the next 3 years. What are the implications for the country? We'll hear from voices from across the political spectrum. Meanwhile, Donald Trump offers absolutely hilarious this asylum to a man who burnt the Quran. He's offering refuge in the United States in a further example of this government's assault on free speech. And it may be dark outside, but get used to it, folks, and get used to the blackouts as Ed Miliband's net zero policies go into overdrive. So my priority for the next 4 hours is to get your opinions on the national radio and television airwaves. My phone number is 0344 499 1000. Damien is on the switchboard this morning taking your call. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note. We know you're busy. So much to get through. Are we stuck with Starmer? As the saying goes, let's talk. We're also going to discuss a possible Brexit betrayal with Ian Duncan Smith before the morning is out. So much to get through. Can we start with today's front pages? And the Times newspaper, the newspaper of record in this country. And that's a story I just mentioned. Workers' rights reforms push a third of employers to cut hiring. More than 30% of employers are set to cut back on hiring because of the government's workers' rights reforms, a survey of employers has found. Businesses warned that new rules giving enhanced protections to workers will place a further handbrake on job creation after they were hit by an increase to national insurance last April. Well, here's the thing, folks, right? This is basically chapter 377 of Socialism Doesn't Work. It's like France. France have better workers' rights than we do and higher unemployment. What is the point of more workers' rights if you don't have a job in the first place? The national insurance tax rate, the increase in the minimum wage, and now the workers' rights package, of course, the brainchild of Big Ange, Angela Rayner, before she left government. But that's a devastating legacy. I do fear that the old enemy of unemployment is returning. And I'll have to tell you, it's a great social ill, because nobody has a right to be handed money by the state. That's why this is the show that supports Alarm Clock Britain, absolutely. We do have the right to work. And what I think needs to happen is that we need a business-friendly environment where it's easy to get a job, where it pays to work. But at the moment, employers are absolutely struggling. Great news for Team GB in the Winter Olympics. Tabitha Stucker and Matt Weston celebrate after winning the mixed team skeleton at the Winter Olympics. Britain's second gold of the day. If you need a brainwave, old and steady trumps youth, say the Times. Whether at the supermarket or in the workplace, it is a cliche that older people are frustratingly slow. It turns out that what old people do, according to this research, is they do things more slowly and methodically and therefore make fewer mistakes than the youngsters. Under 16 social media ban may happen this year is the other story in the Times. You see, rather, Christian, than tackling inflation and the return of the old enemy, unemployment, rather than try to get taxes down, which are at the highest level since the Second World War, all this government can think of doing is banning things. That is not governing. And in fact, that's legal warfare, and it's against free speech. And it's exactly the comfort zone of Keir Starmer, who can't actually take the challenges that are facing the country. The Sun newspaper, exclusive asylum farce, £500,000 phone compo for migrants. An amazing bit of journalism from The Sun today. Michael Hamilton is the reporter that's exposed this scandal. More than 70 boat migrants who had mobile phones seized when reaching the UK have won payouts totalling £500,000. Of course, that's your money and mine. High Court judges ruled that nabbing the phones and data was illegal and in breach of European human rights laws. Folks, we had Brexit. Now we've got to get out of this awful European legal infrastructure. It's got to go. ECHR, the Refugee Convention, the Human Rights Act, tear it all up. Chuck it in the bin because it's making us less safe and poorer. The Guardian revealed the true toll of suicides with domestic abuse at their core. And German and UK military chiefs, we must rearm. And gold medals at the double on Super Olympic Sunday. Daily Telegraph, Trump to give Quran burner US refuge, and democracy denied to 15 million voters if elections are delayed again. Daily Express, switch on the lights to make our streets safer. It's a great story. Council told to prioritise well-lit routes where women walk, travel and wait. Switching off street lights at night to save money is putting women and girls at risk, campaigners warn. Pedestrians are also concerned about greater risks of road collisions when councils dim or switch off lighting between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. to cut costs. Can I just tell you that there's no better example of broken Britain than the fact that we actually can't keep the lights on. We literally cannot keep the lights on. You know that joke when folks say, could the last person to leave Britain please switch the lights off? Well, that's already happened whilst we're still here. We have destroyed our economy because we've adopted socialism under the Tories and particularly, most egregiously, under this Labour government. Who put up taxes, red tape, minimum wage. It is a race to the bottom. And now we cannot afford to light our own streets. End of days, isn't it? 6:10, live in the studio, one of the finest journalists in the country and communications advisor, Linda Jubilee. Good morning, Linda.
Good morning, Mark.
Can we still talk about that? Because, there's all these sort of Westminster bubble stories about, the government, for example, the Prime Minister, was he linked to a Labour pressure group who went after journalists claiming that they were problematic in their views? But this is a real world problem that affects my viewers and listeners. Switch on the lights to make our streets safer. This is councils trying to save money by dimming street lighting at 1 in the morning. Surely that's an economy we can't afford.
Absolutely, and as a woman and the mother of a young daughter, I know that this is the case. I tell my own daughter to walk only down streets that are properly lit and avoid the ones that are now in the dark, because I'm so concerned about the level of violence to women and girls in this country. We've got to do something about this. I think the Labour think tank story is very important as well, by the way. We can't allow lobby groups to start rubbishing some of this country's best journalists. I think that's a complete disgrace. But to be practical, I think this is one issue where taxpayers' money should be spent properly, because frankly, a lot of local authorities waste money on services which are neither wanted nor needed. Yeah, most definitely. And it just demonstrates that we're not getting the basics right in this country. We can't police our borders. No. You've got antisocial behaviour. There's an NHS waiting list of 6 or 7 million people. By the way, it's come down under Labour, partly because they've simply chucked people off the waiting list, some of whom have already passed away, tragically. And we can't keep the lights on. I mean, this is a basic public provision, isn't it? You've got bins not being collected in Birmingham. Yeah. These are the basics. This is why we pay our taxes. I think we've got to go right back to basics, and there is far too much intellectualisation of arguments, far too many esoteric things being discussed, and that's at the expense of real practical things that people need. As you say, the bins being collected. As you know, Mark, my own mother died in hospital a little over a year ago, Hillingdon Hospital, which is so down at heel. It's absolutely appalling. It was earmarked for renovation and partial rebuilding by Boris Johnson. Since then, nothing has moved, because although it's been signed off, the money's just not flowing through. And frankly, parts of that hospital look like they are about to crumble down. I mean, they look like... it wouldn't be too fine a point to say that some of the extensions there, the old ones, look like concentration camps, not hospitals. Well, most definitely. Now we've got this other shocking story in the Sun newspaper. £500,000 phone compo for migrants. OK, so this is quite extraordinary. More than 70 boat migrants who had mobile phones seized when reaching the UK have won payouts totalling £500,000. High Court judges ruled that nabbing the phones and data was illegal and in breach of European human rights laws. There's a surprise. It's feared 1,300 migrants may apply for compensation, and the sum could run to millions. Now, this is quite extraordinary, isn't it? The revelations over the first payments equal to £6,500 per migrant. Reform MP Robert Jenrick said it's a farce and a total waste of taxpayers' money. Is it any wonder why my viewers and listeners are so angry and so fed up? People do just get really, really angry about this. And I did some work with some of the, not asylum seekers, but evacuees that came from Afghanistan. And they were actually given mobile phones as soon as they got here. Now, I don't think that's as bad as this. But what people fail to understand is that all of this is paid by our money. There is no magic money tree at the end of the garden that everyone can give it a good shakedown and get some cash out. It's all our money, and there is only so much to go round. around. And at the moment in this country, when we are short of social housing, when we are seeing huge problems in the NHS, when we are seeing problems in our education systems, there's no point in wasting money on things like this. It's daylight robbery.
Well, if somebody enters the country illegally, now look, the bottom line is a number of these people, you know, it's wrong to demonise everyone that crosses the channel.
Of course.
Some of them may just be regular folk who are leaving a poor part of the world where there is war or persecution, and they are coming here for a better life. Now, of course, the issue we've got is there's about 2 or 3 billion people in that position at the moment.
Yeah, I mean,
take all those people.
And you know, Mark, that I've done classes in conversational English. Besides being a journalist, I've taken time out and worked in the trenches with refugees and asylum seekers and evacuees. So, of course, I feel compassion for these people, but there is only so much money to go round. And when you and I might be existing on a, you know, outdated phone, you know, what is mine? Mine's an 11 or something like that. It belongs in a museum.
It's like the last century. Tony Blair was Prime Minister when that came out.
Why would we start giving expensive pieces of kit to migrants?
Well, that's it. And so I was just going to say, we're not going to demonise everybody, except nobody should be crossing the channel illegally. And therefore, if you do cross the channel illegally, you've paid a gangster or a criminal to make that crossing.
Exactly.
Then you've already broken the law. Surely, when they arrive, we are entitled to take any documents they have, and we are entitled to take any devices they have.
Well, of course,
they are criminals.
The documents have gone over the side much earlier in their
exactly.
journey.
That's wishful thinking, isn't it?
But I've done many presentations on this. They always keep their phones, or try to. So there's no problem with them being confiscated. I would have thought there was a security implication there anyway. So probably their phones should be confiscated.
Well, absolutely. Let's take a voice note, Linda, from Pete on this. Take a listen.
Well, then, Mark, hang on. Can someone put me right on this? We've now got to pay for them because they get their phones taken away from them when they get here in a dinghy. I thought they were all throwing their phones over into the sea when they were coming over to avoid identity. Can't have it both ways, can they? Something funny going on there.
There's definitely something funny going on there. Pete, it is a legal and constitutional framework that makes it impossible for us to be a proper country. That is the bottom line. If you've entered the country illegally, you don't have full comprehensive rights, Linda, as you wouldn't if you tried to enter Australia illegally. And now, at least in 2026, America illegally or China illegally. Good luck with that.
That's right. It used to be slightly different, but with this, well, it's like a tsunami of boats coming over. There's so many boats coming over now that it means that they are being trafficked by illegal people. Therefore, their journey, and they are illegal. They've had to save up many thousands of pounds to pay these smugglers to get them into this country. And of course, you've got to remember that's just not about them. That perpetuates a system where people are frequently in danger and held, you know, not held to ransom, but they're kind of held to vast payments by these vile people traffickers.
It's just all wrong, isn't it, that the authorities are not in control when someone lands illegally on our shores. Surely, if you wash up on a beach, you have no rights. I mean, I'm so angry about this, Linda. I'm so sorry. I try to be temperate as a broadcaster. It's a responsibility being on the national television and radio airways, that if I smash in a shop window and the cops turn up, at that point I have fewer rights than I did before I smashed the shop window. One of the rights I may lose is my liberty for a few hours. As my actions are investigated. So if people wash up on our beaches, as it were, then their documents, if they've got them, as you say, they may say their phone. And the point is that the phone is a rather critical thing to get a hold of, because that's a piece of evidence as to how they got here and why.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So there's the evidential point of view of the phone, but we don't know who these people are. We don't know what they're going to use their phones for. The phone is the one thing that would facilitate that kind of activity, so it should be confiscated.
Well, most definitely. So there are the authorities, and again, you know, let's get that caveat sorted at 19 minutes past 6 on a Monday morning. We're not saying that everyone on those boats is a criminal, a rapist, a murderer, or a terrorist. But the authorities know, for example, that there is a portion of people that cross the channel that have suspected terror links. That's out there.
Yeah,
That's
we
MI5.
know that. We know that. The police know that.
Yeah.
The authorities know that.
And what we need to understand, the left will
that.
tell you the numbers are minuscule, 70,000 since the Prime Minister became, entered number 10. But it only takes one person to do a Manchester Arena or
exactly.
a 9/11. And that's why it's so critical.
We don't know the numbers are minuscule. We don't know what the numbers are at all, because no one's done any data collection. No one knows where these people have come from. No one knows what their antecedents were in the country they left. No one knows what they might be planning or not planning in this country. I, for one, have spoken to a borough commander across 3 London boroughs, and he has told me they are terribly concerned about this situation.
I mean, I'm absolutely boiling with rage about this, I've got to say. Here's a voice note from James.
Good morning, Mark. The compensation for illegal immigrants then, quite unbelievable. So you break into the country and basically you get rewarded. Quite unbelievable. You know what, Mark? This muppet in charge at the moment is never going to stop this. Not while this guy's in charge. There's only one man, I believe, and that's Rupert Lowe. Detain, deport. Detain, deport. Simple as that. You'll solve so many problems. Thanks, Mark. Enjoy the rest of your day.
How can I disagree with you, James? It's quite shocking. This is our lead story of the day, the Sun newspaper, an exclusive. £500,000 phone compensation for migrants, with potentially millions of claims to come in the years ahead. Talk about a broken system. So much more to get through. More front pages coming up. It is 6:21. This is Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan in for Jeremy Kyle.
This is the political asylum, current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something. Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this. We're with you every weekday night, Monday to Friday, 7 until 10 p.m, right here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Top of the morning, it is 26 minutes past 3. Happy Monday, one and all. Mark Dolan in for Jeremy Kyle. A very, very busy 4 hours to come. And we're leading with this shocking story. A Sun newspaper exclusive. £500,000 phone compo for migrants is the headline. More than 70 boat migrants who had mobile phones seized when reaching the UK have won payouts totalling £500,000. High Court judges ruled that nabbing the phones and data was illegal and in breach of European human rights laws. The Prime Minister should have an emergency press conference this morning in which he says that I'm going to exit the ECHR and I'm going to look again at the Refugee Convention and I'm going to rescind the Human Rights Act. And this will be emergency legislation and it will be done before the week is out. That is what leadership looks like. Of course, we're probably not going to get it from this Prime Minister. Phil says, good morning, Mark. I'm messaging you from Coventry. I was in quite a good mood until I heard about the compensation for mobile phones for illegal immigrants that have broken into our country. What the heck, he says. This country is finished, mate, finished. The idiots running our country need locking up. I feel completely betrayed by my own country. What about this from Keith? Good morning, Mark. Keith in Wolverhampton here. Watch all the prisoners in jail, brackets criminals, claim that their phones were taken when they were found guilty. It's exactly the same thing. Nick says, good morning, Mark. Does the ECHR dictate that these illegal invaders are entitled to legal aid to enable phone compensation? If so, this needs to be stopped and stopped overnight. Those grifting human rights lawyers are the problem. They live high on the public hog and will vanish overnight if we tackle this problem. The problem you've got, Linda Jubilee, broadcaster and communications consultant, is the messaging to my viewers and listeners that if you've entered the country illegally, you've broken the law. We don't know your background. As you said, documents get chucked in the sea. And now they can sue the government. And actually, this could run to millions because of their human rights. And this is not going to fly with the public.
Well, it sends a totally disastrous signal to the public who are struggling right now. We all know that. You know, January and February, always a terribly difficult month. You've got your tax to pay, you've got your credit card bills to pay, you've got, you know, you might be struggling with the rent, your grocery bills gone up, energy bills are going up, and all of this is going on. But it's very interesting because I said a short while ago to you that what it does as well is it perpetuates a heinous traffic in human beings, which should be stopped on those grounds alone. And here we see in The Sun, instead of deterring illegal entry, the system has ended up financially rewarding it. That's from William Yarwood from the Taxpayers Alliance.
Yeah.
And that's what we've done. We're encouraging a situation to continue. I don't think Keir Starmer and his team have thought that through.
No, they haven't thought that through. And the issue you've got is that, you know, this is obviously the comfort zone of the Prime Minister, human rights laws. He's a former human rights lawyer. And so he's the very last person that's going to look again at our membership of the ECHR. He's the last person that will ever tear it up.
Well, his comfort zone should be our comfort zone. He should be thinking about what makes this country, we can't even get comfortable at the moment, what makes us feel as though someone is protecting us, someone is protecting our borders. What would make a difference to us if this government took effective action to protect its citizens? And at the moment, this makes it look as though that is simply not happening.
I mean, £500,000 phone compo for migrants, is that the kind of headline that delivers power for Reform UK at the next election?
Well, it certainly doesn't hurt them.
I mean, that could be the campaign leaflet, couldn't it? That front page.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And at the moment, I think we've noticed Nigel Farage slip slightly in the polls, but it's this kind of thing that will push him back up again. I am certain of that.
Yeah, most definitely. And I mean, do you think clearly Nigel Farage will put pay to all of this when he becomes Prime Minister? There will be challenges legally as a result, of course. But do you think the Prime Minister will move on this, given the level of public anger that's inevitably going to come?
Well, I can't remember what number U-turn he's on at the moment. Isn't it number 14? 14 or 15? And so he has history here. He has done U-turns when he's had to do U-turns. It would look disastrous, but I feel as though he has to, even if he doesn't do a U-turn, he has to put the brakes on this and start explaining what the policy is here. What is the theory behind that policy? Because I think that what Keir Starmer is short of, and has been short of for the last 18 months, is effective policy making. He's worrying far too much about things that don't matter to the population, and he isn't concentrating on things that do matter. And the two things that matter are the economy and what happens to our taxpayers' money, and immigration.
Well, most definitely. Chris says, good morning, Mark and Linda. Illegals are criminals for breaking into the country. So will people in prison now use the ECHR to claim compensation like they have, as it must work all ways? If you get arrested, your phone is taken off you. I mean, that's the great irony, Linda, that actually British prisoners have fewer rights than those just landing on our shores in a dinghy.
Yeah, the phones need.
The law's an ass.
It's ridiculous. The phones need to be confiscated immediately. That should have been happening all along. And maybe some good come of this. There will be such outrage over this that maybe the authorities will have to start thinking about confiscating those devices as soon as the people land here.
Nigel says, good morning, Mark, great show. In the UK, police have the authority to seize electronics from houses, including phones, computers, laptops, tablets and external hard drives, if they have legal grounds to do so as part of a criminal investigation. Does this mean that everybody that this happens to can claim compo off of High Court judges? Well, no, Nigel, because British criminals are not covered by the ECHR. This is an international convention and it's based around people that have entered the country because they are asylum seekers, they are fleeing tyranny, all of that stuff. The problem you've got, Linda, is that there's no way to tweak the ECHR.
That's right. What exactly what I was going to say.
And it cannot be adapted in the national interest.
No, it can't. And so even though I felt very strongly about this 2 or 3 years ago, that maybe there might be a way that the ECHR rulings could stand, I don't think that is the case anymore.
Yeah.
I think we have to leave it.
Well, I think we do. I think it's a non-starter. Paul says, good morning, Mark. Paul in Ivor. Sounds like we need much better lawyers. Why does the prosecution for ECHR always seem to win? Well, Paul, because the law is on their side. I think that's why. Hi, Mark and Linda, says Mike in Newcastle. The mobile phone compensation issue is just another income stream for the lawyers. That's the point, Linda. Follow the money. This is an industry now, and you have human rights lawyers advising these migrants what to do and what to say when they arrive here.
I know. The whole thing is a complete shambles from A to Z. I mean, if you think about all the people that make the inflatables, all the smugglers, the smuggling networks, the gang chiefs who run the smuggling networks, the people in this country who make money off of getting these people sorted into our asylum system. I mean, it is so shocking that all of this money is wasted when we need to fund more housing, the NHS, education. Schools need to be drastically refurbed in this country, and we're not spending money in the right areas, and that's what's annoying people.
And by the way, this £500,000, of course, that is compensation, but it's a drop in the ocean in relation to the cost of accommodating these folk in hotels, on army bases, all the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, Sir Keir Starmer will say we're bringing the number of people down in the hotels. But that's true, but where are the people going? They've got to go somewhere. They have to go into converted military accommodation, they have to go into social housing if there's any left, and there's almost none of that for people who live here permanently, or you have to build new housing. It's like moving the deck chairs round on the Titanic. You know, there's no place for this number of people to be housed.
Most definitely. Sharon, good morning, Mark and Linda. Illegal immigrants that come here in small boats claiming compensation. Is this a joke? This useless government will not compensate the waspy women that have worked hard all their working lives, yet these illegal immigrants can come into the UK and claim everything. Well, I share your anger, folks, I've got to say, and so does Matt. Here's a voice note.
Good morning, Mark. Matt in Mornington. Another day, another dollar, loading the van up. Why are we giving legal aid to these migrants? Stop the legal aid, it'll stop the lawyers, it'll stop them putting claims in, and they won't come over. I can't get legal aid. If they can afford to pay criminals thousands of pounds to come over on a dinghy, then they can afford to pay for their legal aid. Stop the legal aid. That will stop a lot of the problems. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of paying for these people. I'm sick of hearing how they get benefits and how they get payouts and how lucky their lives are. I'm up to the eyeballs sick of hearing about these people.
I'm sick of it too, Matt. You speak for millions. More to come, more front pages. Quite shocking developments across the board, folks. It is 6:34. This is Talk Breakfast.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
6:35 Talk Breakfast. Happy Monday, one and all. A very busy show ahead. And we're focusing this morning on a shocking headline in the Sun newspaper. It's an exclusive £500,000 phone compensation for migrants. More than 70 boat migrants who had mobiles seized when reaching the UK have won payouts totalling £500,000. High Court judges ruled that nabbing the phones and data was illegal and in breach of European human rights laws. It's feared that 1,300 migrants may apply for compensation and the sum could run to millions. It works out in the region of £6,500 per migrant. It's extraordinary, isn't it? Because if you break the law in this country, you would expect the police to apprehend you, to potentially take your phone. For example, if you're involved in a car crash, and it may have been your fault, your phone will be taken. But seemingly, if you cross the channel on a dinghy, you have more rights than a British criminal. Border officials searched illegal migrants' phones. They've had to pay out now as a result of that. Activist lawyers say it was a breach of human rights. The Home Office loses and faces a bill of millions. This from William Yarwood, Taxpayers Alliance. Instead of deterring illegal entry, the system has ended up financially rewarding it. Alp Mehmet, Migration Watch UK. Taxpayers should not have to pay huge sums to people who have broken into the country. And Linda Jubilee, this news and this payout will be weaponised by the criminals who are taking the money to put people on boats.
Absolutely.
I mean that will be on the TikTok advert, won't it?
Oh my goodness.
Enter Britain, get a hotel, get 3 meals a day, get dentistry and a GP appointment, have the freedom to roam the streets and get £6,500 compo.
It's extraordinary, and I think that the government and institutions now, the institutions that we should respect and that govern us, have now lost so much respect from people in this country because of this story and because of other stories that we've seen roll out over the last couple of weeks, that I don't think they really understand that trust is at an all-time low in this government and in the institutions that we should be respecting. People simply don't trust. There's no trust anymore, and that's a very dangerous thing for society in general.
Well, definitely, we don't seem to have a society that prioritises the citizens, that our needs and our rights are trumping those who are from overseas, especially those who have entered the country illegally. I mean, look at this from Sarah Jane. Good morning, Mark and Linda. I have cerebral palsy because of appalling maternity care. I did not get any compensation, so I've had years of stress from local social services teams. Please can you ask Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, to take my phone off me and then give me around £15 million, thanks.
She's got a very, very good point, because that's another area. Maternity services in this country are an utter disgrace in some areas, and there are some women that are really fearful about giving birth at certain hospitals. We know there's a catastrophic situation there. We need to spend money on our NHS in general and maternity services in particular, but we don't seem to be, the government doesn't seem to be paying attention to the fact that this is taxpayers' money. As William Yarwood goes on to say, it is utterly perverse that people who broke into this country are now being handed these cheques courtesy of British taxpayers. There is only so much money to go round.
Yeah, most definitely. Here's Wayne here with a voice note on this issue. Take a listen.
Morning, Mark. This is Wayne from Erdington in Birmingham. You got to be joking, mate. Compensation for what? For breaking into our country? We got to wake up. This is utter crap. I'm sick of this, mate. I'm absolutely sick of this. Every morning you wake up the same old. Wake up, for God's sake. Keep up the good work, Mark.
Oh, Wayne, you get it, I get it, Linda Jubilee gets it, those who govern us do not. Front page of the Times, Linda, workers' rights reforms push a third of employers to cut hiring. Chapter 377, socialism doesn't work.
Yeah, that's right. That's what Margaret Thatcher said, didn't she? She said the problem with socialism is it's fine until you run out of other people's money.
That's the one.
The problem here is that you've got a front bench and a cabinet that have no business experience at all. None of them do. So the problem is that when you're piling on all these extra expenses, there's an increase in the minimum wage, there's NI contributions have been hiked up, there are all sorts of things changing. There's the assumption in this government that that does not have a repercussion. It does have a repercussion for the employer when the employer has to employ people. They cut back on the number of employees they've got and they freeze recruiting more, and that leads to a lack of momentum, which is precisely what we don't want in this economy. In this economy, we want business growth. At the moment, it's at a miserable 0.1%, or just above that slightly.
Yeah.
That's nothing compared to what Keir Starmer promised. But what do you expect when you have ministers that don't know how to run a budget, that don't understand how to measure your margins, that don't understand how you have to push your margin to get a bit more, to invest in your company, to take on more staff and take that risk when you may not be able to pay yourself? You know, that is, and this, I'm talking about SMEs, small and medium enterprises,
which is the biggest part of our economy.
And also the lifeblood of Britain, you know.
It's where the innovation is. They're the biggest employers. People think that the really big corporates are actually have got the lion's share of, you know, the employing people and of national income. It's not true. It's predominantly SMEs.
It's got to start. Businesses start somewhere. You know, Napoleon. I think it was Napoleon. He said we were a nation of shopkeepers. He wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
We are a nation that likes to build business, and at the moment there is absolutely no support for that in this country.
Most definitely, and this is the law of unintended consequences, isn't it, Linda? Because I don't know a single viewer and listener to this show who doesn't think we need workers' rights. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
I don't know a single listener or viewer of the show that doesn't think that people should be paid a fair wage for putting in a shift, right? And I get, you know, the Sainsbury's delivery. We're quite, Mrs. Dolan and I, we're quite busy, so we have the delivery of Sainsbury's, which I love. And I want the guy that brings in my cornflakes and my sliced white bread to be on a good income. I don't want him on a quid a day.
Yeah.
You know, I want him to own a car and take a holiday every year and have a nice life with his family. But
it all needs to be calibrated.
Bingo.
That's what I'm saying.
Bingo.
Now, it's not necessarily the law of unintended consequences. I'm saying that in this government in particular, it's the law of unknown consequences. They wouldn't know about the consequences if they've never been in business.
Because no entrepreneur would sign off the national insurance tax raid. No entrepreneur would sign off the workers' rights legislation, which is horrific red tape. No entrepreneur would sign off the increase in the minimum wage, which is inflationary and freezing young people out of the jobs market.
It's very, very difficult. You know, I've got 3 adult children and I know how difficult their lives are. It's hugely difficult. They face financial pressures. They face all the pressures of repaying loans, which are not loans, but actually a tax rise. But that's another story, of course.
Yeah,
they face that.
Loans, yeah.
The student loans situation is a disgrace. They face housing problems. They face problems if they get ill with queuing up for the NHS. All of this is going on. Meanwhile, no attempt to get business on the move.
I'm glad you mentioned about the NHS, because I've noticed actually that younger people are treated as second-class citizens in the NHS because it seems less urgent because they're not on the verge of death. I know lots of young people with problems with their knees, other issues, lower back pain, but they're 25. There's a great crime of being 25 or 30. And the resources in the NHS get hoovered up by 75-year-olds with diabetes.
Well, that's the
problem. And my heart goes out to them, but actually these young people are the lifeblood of our economy. And again, if the NHS is not working for them, it's further disengagement from our young.
I mean, the fact of the matter is that in this population, we have an ageing population. We have a larger and larger ageing population that you know, needs support. They're unwell. They need better social care. And because they're not getting it, they're leaning on the NHS. But there's all the expense of that. Whilst they are not economically active, you've then got a whole generation of NEETs, no one in education, employment or training, taking benefits. I think the benefit bill is now at something like £300 billion a year. And you've got a smaller and smaller band of people working, paying tax, to pay for a bigger and bigger group of people. I mean, anyone could tell you that will end in disaster.
Well, definitely, and I actually worry for the future political stability of the country with how things are for young people, and I'll tell you for why. If young people don't have skin in the game, that there's no hope of ever getting on the housing ladder, well, then they're not invested in the UK economy. They actually don't care what's going to happen to the UK economy. It's only when you become a homeowner that you're part of the economy.
Yes.
Because you're directly impacted by inflation and interest rates.
I tell you what you get as well. You get a society which is built on the haves and the have-nots, because those children with parents who can afford to maybe pay the deposit, maybe supplement their mortgage payments, maybe help them in lots of other ways. You know, the famous Bank of Mum and Dad can help out. But only some families are like that. An awful lot of families cannot lean on their parents, their grandparents that way. And there is a bigger and bigger divide, which is such an irony, because we've got a socialist government running the country now, and that gap is getting bigger.
Well, this is it. So with a generation of young people that have no prospect of getting on the housing ladder, if they're paying £800-900 for a crappy room in a flat share well into their 30s, if they can't afford to have kids or even get married and settle down, they can't afford the deposit for the wedding reception, let alone a house. If all of those circumstances prevail, and by the way, here's the other one now with this workers' rights package, that they can't even get a job, well, then at some point they'll be attracted to a radical, populist, left-wing party, potentially the likes of the Greens. Because I think if enough young people feel like, well, the economy's not working for them, then let's smash it up, let's break it. And you'll get a Zach Polanski in number 10. I wouldn't rule it out.
Well, I don't know that we can mention the exact constituency by-election, but there is a by-election coming up. And that will tell us a great deal, because that by-election will be fought between two parties. Conservatives are nowhere. Labour say they've got a great local candidate, but I don't think that they will, you know, really hold on to a large majority. They won't even have a majority, because I think they'll lose. You've got two parties competing, and I think the Greens stand a reasonable chance of doing very well.
Well, that's right, and it's essentially communism light, folks. So be afraid, be very afraid.
Yeah, because actually, can I just break in there and say there are very few actual green policies that I hear coming out of Zach Polanski's mouth.
No, it'll be redistribution of wealth, and if you can't get on a housing ladder and you've got no job and you're young and no doctor is willing to see you because you're not on the verge of death,
I know that they're making.
You'll be seeking a radical solution.
Yeah.
And I think that is the worry for our democracy, I've got to say. Here is a voice note on this shocking story if you're joining us at 6:48 on Talk Breakfast. Exclusive asylum farce, £500,000 phone compensation for migrants who had their phones taken when they entered the country illegally. This is Tony.
Good morning, Mark. Tony from Worcester. On the topic of the migrants getting compensation for the removal of their mobile phones, the government's not going to do anything, are they? It's all part of their socialist ideology. Let's remove money from the people that work or dads own a home and redistribute it, give it to those that don't have very much. It's laughable, really. Brilliant show as always. I'm a big fan. I'll be back tomorrow.
Oh, Tony, thank you for the kind words and thank you for the common sense as well. So much more to come, more front pages. It is 6:48. This is Talk Breakfast.
murdered all those people at that school, that Canada school shooting yesterday?
What are you on about, Julia?
Who
For
murdered?
God's
Was it a
sake.
man or a woman?
No, I'm sorry.
Was it a man or a woman?
No. Yeah, we're talking about education.
Who was
UK
it?
School system. No, stop it, Julia.
Stop
because
what?
You're doing there is you're equating regular trans people.
Regular
with
trans
murderers,
people.
right? And you know what you're doing
No.
by doing that.
No.
You're stirring the pot.
You're saying you believe that men can become women and women can become men. I don't think they can.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
6:51 Talk Breakfast. Lovely to have your company. And a massive, massive headache for the King as the bad headlines around Andrew Mountbatten Windsor continue apace. Could the disgraced former Duke of York go to prison? Let's get the views of one of the country's finest royal experts. Live from the United States, Kinsey Schofield, star of Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered. Kinsey, welcome to the show.
I mean, when are these headlines going to end, Mark Dolan? Just when you think things are slowing down, it feels like they ramp right back up.
Well, that's right. And the country's chief prosecutor has said no one is above the law, including Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, partly because he's had his royal titles taken. He's no longer Prince Andrew.
Well, for years, Andrew's Epstein ties were mostly a matter of public scrutiny. I mean, we have said, the two of us together, you are who you associate with. And that was enough for us. But now those connections are going to be under formal investigations. Authorities are examining whether his meetings and communications with Jeffrey Epstein could amount to misconduct while acting in an official capacity for the government. If evidence supports it, this could move beyond mere scandal into a criminal inquiry, a serious step for a senior royal and a significant moment for the monarchy.
Well, that's right. There are so many elements to this, aren't there, Kinsey? There are the sexual allegations, the idea that young women were trafficked to the United Kingdom by Epstein for the pleasure of Andrew, allegations that things may have happened on royal turf, including at Buckingham Palace, potentially while Queen Elizabeth was in Balmoral. Allegations which Andrew denies, but damaging allegations nonetheless. So you've got that side of it. Then you've got the financial impropriety. And then you have the small matter of national security and the idea that Andrew may be guilty of misconduct in public office, sharing commercially and national insurance-ly sensitive documents abroad.
Well, there's a newly released dossier, and I mean, does it ever end? But it paints a more troubling picture of Andrew's relationship with Epstein, because these emails, they suggest that Andrew allowed Epstein to help arrange meetings during an official trade trip to China. And photos of this trip show Andrew socializing with a Chinese model on that same 2010 visit. So, I think it's fair to assume that perhaps Jeffrey Epstein made an introduction there. The documents also claim that earlier in the year, Andrew shared a confidential Treasury briefing on Iceland's financial crisis with a banker friend, which I think you were alluding to, and passed along messages concerning the taxpayer-owned Royal Bank of Scotland to advisor David Stern, who then, according to the Daily Mail, forwarded them to Jeffrey Epstein. Andrew even attempted to set up a meeting between Epstein and a Libyan dictator at Epstein's request, but the Daily Mail stresses that meeting ultimately never happened, although Andrew should have never been trying to set up that meeting in the first place.
The issue, we've got Linda Jubilee live in the studio, is that the Andrew allegations, that go beyond sex, go beyond financial impropriety. This is national security. This is somebody whose actions may have actually worked against the interests of the state.
Yes, that's very, very true. And also there is a reason why senior Polish investigative journalists and the Polish authorities are actually taking a look at Epstein's links with Russia and Mandelson's links with Russia, because they think that there is a national security problem here. And Andrew is right in the middle of that mix. Now, the fact of the matter is, I mean, Kinsey's outlined some of this, but Andrew Liana makes it clear in his book Entitlement that all the way through, from the time that Prince Andrew was appointed as a trade envoy to the UK, he was continually going on trips early, leaving them late, so that he could furnish his own business interests, allegedly, before and after, doing whatever he's doing, such as it was, for our country. And the fact of the matter is, in the book, in that particular book, alongside the heinous situation with the trafficking of young girls, is the hideous prospect that many millions of pounds of taxpayers' money in this country has been misspent.
And Kinsey, King Charles has run out of levers to pull in relation to his younger brother, hasn't he? He's no longer Duke of York. He doesn't have the membership of the Order of the Garter. He's not Prince Andrew. There's not too much more you can do other than make the guy homeless, living in a tent in a field somewhere. So now King Charles is a passenger in this awful story.
Yeah, well, my suggestion is throw him under the bus. Tell us all, you know, I'm revolted. I'm disgusted by my brother. I had no clue this was going on. I don't even like the guy. Why would I know his schedule? Why would I talk to him? The king has said recently, I will collaborate, I will contribute in any way, shape, or form with law enforcement as they continue to investigate this. I think that that is a great thing, although I do wish the king would, you know, step up and say, I'm as appalled as you are. I'm disgusted. I had no clue, and I'm distancing myself.
Yeah, the problem there is, Kinsey, that I strongly suspect that King Charles did know about some of the things, not all of the things in detail, but he was well aware of his brother's character, and he was known to say to people in the royal household that Andrew was an accident waiting to happen. And that's the issue here. The issue for the monarchy, I believe, is that certain people, dare I say it, the much, much loved late Queen and his brother, King Charles, may have turned a blind eye to some things they should have paid attention to earlier, and it won't do any good now to say, sorry, I don't know anything about this.
That's a great question from, and a point from Linda, isn't it, Kinsey? How much did the king know? How much did the Queen know? Surely they knew that Andrew was a wrong-un.
Well, when we hear about 26-year-old Russians in their stilettos getting a tour of Buckingham Palace after a nightcap with Andrew and tea, you have to ask yourself, how many witnesses were there wondering why this 20-something is skipping along the Buckingham Palace carpets? I mean, I have my own questions. But I also understand that Charles has always hated Andrew, did not give him the time of day, thought he was an imbecile, thought he was just a moron. And so would he know his schedule? Would he even want to know the details of his life? I don't know. I mean, I do think that this is a problem that he inherited, and I apologize to those that this offends, but I put a lot of the blame on the late Queen Elizabeth and her council.
Wow.
Why were they not more aggressive?
Is this the mother of all cover-ups? Linda?
I think Kinsey's right that Andrew was known to be her favourite child, that she permitted, a lot of behaviour that should have perhaps been reprimanded. But the fact of the matter is that the royal household, as you know, works in a way where everyone's diaries match up with everyone else. So everyone knew what Prince Andrew was doing. That's how they know he went on trips as a royal trade envoy early and stayed late, because people were well aware of the details of what he was doing. Certainly the courtiers were.
My thanks to the brilliant Linda Jubilee and Kinsey Schofield. More to come. This is Talk Breakfast.
Hello from Crowborough, where the local residents are enraged with what has happened to their community merely overnight, when just 27 single male asylum seeker illegal migrants were bussed into their military training camp. Behind me are local residents, people from all over the country. Shabana Mahmood has said that this is an effective way of getting rid of those expensive, flashy asylum hotels. But unfortunately, these people are still placed within the community.
Whole town is very afraid because these are unvetted men from countries that are, the government warn us not to go to. I've got an 18-year-old daughter and she gets the bus opposite camp. Do you feel safe for her? No, so that will have to stop. We'll either have to wait with her or take her to wherever she needs to go.
The reason I'm here today is because I live in Crowborough and my family, I've got a wife and children, and just worried about, my wife walking to work and my sons, walking about. Anything can happen, can't it, that nowadays, Nigel, what's going on, what's happening in this country. So I'm just concerned and frightened,
There was support from other towns, other communities, because of course Shabana Mahmood has threatened other communities, and she said they're going to open site after site after site. Well, I would hope that if she's going to try and do that, she learns some lessons about the way she's done it in Crowborough, because this is not finished. We are not finished objecting to this plan.
Crowborough says no! Crowborough says no! Crowborough says no!
We would urge her to reconsider, and whatever she does, she needs to talk to the people that she's imposing these things on.
If you had a direct line to Keir Starmer and Shabana Mahmood, what would you say to them?
Look after your most vulnerable first. It's your priority to look after your vulnerable.
If they're bringing illegal immigrants into a camp in the dead of night, why are they doing that? They're doing that because it's disingenuous, it's dishonest, it's covert, and they're trying to keep the reality away from the local community of what they're actually doing to us. We've now got to the end of the entrance to the camp, we've got cameras, we've got police drones. It's like a cloud that's come over this community.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Three minutes past 7, top of the morning. Mark Dolan in for Jeremy Kyle all week. A packed show for you. And breaking this morning, £500,000 worth of compensation has been paid out to illegal immigrants who successfully sued the UK government for taking their phones when they arrived in Dover, all because of, you guessed it, European rights laws. So the bottom line is many will sue, and this could see a compensation bill running to the tens of millions. Meanwhile, in another worrying development for the economy, the government workers' rights reforms have pushed a third of employers to cut hiring. Is Britain on the brink of an unemployment surge? Also this morning, are we stuck with Starmer as the Labour Party struggles to get behind any of the key leadership candidates? Is it Starmer for the next 3 years? And if so, what are the prospects for the country? Donald Trump offers refuge to a man who burnt the Quran in the UK. The US demonstrating that once again Britain simply doesn't have freedom of speech. And get used to it, folks, blackouts are on the way as Ed Miliband's net zero policies go into overdrive. Now, my priority for the next 3 hours is to get your opinions on the national radio and television airwaves. My phone number is 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note, and as the saying goes, let's talk. And if you're just waking up to the show, lovely to have your company. Front page of the Sun newspaper. Exclusive asylum farce. 500k phone compo for migrants is the headline. More than 70 boat migrants who had mobile phones seized when reaching the UK have won payouts totalling £500,000. High Court judges ruled that nabbing the phones and data was illegal and in breach of European human rights laws. It's feared that 1,300 migrants may apply for compensation. The sum could run into millions. This payout works out at around £6,500 per migrant. Now, don't forget, these people have broken the law. They've crossed the channel in a dinghy. We don't know what's on their mobile phones. It could demonstrate and explain why they're here, how they got here, and what their plans are having arrived here. Let's take a voice note from Sean.
Morning, Mark. Sean from Grimsby here. With this treacherous government now billing us to pay compo for these illegal immigrants because they've had the phones gone. You know, can someone remind me why I go to work again? And, you know, please, you know, I'm all ears to listen to good ideas about why I should stay in work, mate, because a big part of me, mate, is thinking, you know what, F this, mate. Great show.
Sean, this is exactly how people feel. We're at the end of our tether. If the people that cross the channel on boats, they've paid criminals to get here, they've entered the country, we don't know their background, they chuck their documents in the sea, we take their phones off them and then they can sue us. They've actually got more rights than British criminals, because if I put a brick through someone's window, the police will immediately deal with my human rights. I'll be incarcerated, I'll have my documents taken off me, I won't have my phone in that jail cell. It goes into a clear bag. Make it make sense. Let's get a reaction now to this shocking story. Brendan O'Neill is the chief political writer at Spiked Online. Good morning, Brendan.
Hey, Mark. How you doing?
Very well indeed. Very good to see you again. 500k phone compo for migrants. No wonder my viewers and listeners are tearing their hair out.
Oh, people are going mad about stories like this because they are so infuriating. I think your caller, Sean, will have spoken for many people when he said that this is just winding him up. You know, these stories are coming thick and fast now, and it really demonstrates how farcical our border control system has become. Because as you say, Mark, a key part of working out who an illegal immigrant is, where they've come from, who helped them to get to the UK, what they might plan to do while they're in the UK, a lot of that information will become clear from their phones. It is absolutely a fundamental right, I think, of a democratic nation to take the phones of illegal arrivals to try and work out what the hell they're up to. So the fact that European human rights law is even frustrating that, even preventing us from doing that very basic task, really demonstrates that it's just interfering with our democratic rights as a sovereign nation.
That's right. Many of these illegal immigrants stay in touch with the folk that traffic them here, don't they, for a start?
Oh yes, absolutely. There will be just so much information on those phones that would be useful to the authorities in working out what is going on. You know, smash the gangs, Keir Starmer said about 5,000 times, repeating it on a loop. He hasn't done that. But if you did want to smash the gangs, one thing you would do is seize illegal immigrants' phones and find out who these gangs are. Where are they? What are they saying to each other? It's just preposterous. And, you know, you're absolutely right when you say that it seems like these illegal arrivals have more rights than ordinary Brits. Firstly, if we were to commit a crime, it's very possible our phones would be seized and studied by the police. Also, if we were down on our luck and lost our jobs and couldn't make ends meet, there's no way we could go to the government and say, please put us up in a 4-star hotel, give us 3 meals a day and give us a taxi to the local dentist. They would laugh in your face. So we now face a situation where people who come here illegally have more rights to basic necessities and more rights to privacy than your average Brit who's lived in this country for centuries. It just doesn't make sense.
Most definitely. There are implications, I think, aren't there, Brendan, for our economy, because on these mobile phones will be a potential UK contact who will be saying to an illegal immigrant, here's the car wash where you can work, here's a guy whose house you can stay in, here's somewhere where you can, you know, whatever, just enter the black economy. You've got that element, which is an economic concern. But then you've got national security too, given the fact that the security services of this country are very clear that some of the people that cross the channel may have terror links. Again, key information that could be on their mobile phones.
Unquestionably. They may have actual terror links with organisations, or they may hold views that we decide as a nation are not conducive to the public good. You know, recently an illegal immigrant who came on a boat was seen doing a Nazi salute at one of those anti-Israel protests that have been infecting our cities for the past 2.5 years. Do we want people like that in our country? Do we want people who hold anti-Semitic views, who watch ISIS videos, who share horribly anti-Israel memes on their phones and say, you know, we hate the Jewish state? All this kind of information is likely to be on their phones in the conversations they're having with friends. Either they've got direct links with questionable groups, or they hold views that we have a right as a nation to decide that we don't want in our country. So we are just, you know, we can't do what we need to do, which is to hold to account the people who come here illegally, to say to them, we need to find out who you are, where you come from, so that we can send you back. And the fact that we can't do that, it really just calls into question the idea that we are a properly sovereign nation anymore.
Now, we're looking at £500,000 so far in compensation that's paid out. That's your money, my money, Brendan, and the money of my viewers and listeners. This could run to millions, as others may sue, given that we've got this legal precedent. So this will be very expensive, and a PR coup for those gangsters and criminals who are putting people on the boats, the so-called gangs that you mentioned that Keir Starmer apparently is going to smash. Likely these payouts will be part of the sales pitch on TikTok for future illegal immigrants.
Absolutely. You know, we are now rewarding people who come here illegally. That's what we're doing. We are rewarding them with comfortable hotels. We're rewarding them with food and medical treatment and a home office card that allows them to spend money on whatever they want to buy. And now we're rewarding them with thousands of pounds because we supposedly took their phones illegally. So this is another green light. This is a green light to the gangs. This is a green light to the mostly young men in Calais from places like Eritrea or Afghanistan or wherever else it might be. It's a green light to them to come to the UK. We are a soft touch. We are advertising to the world that we don't take our borders seriously. We don't take our nationhood seriously. We don't take our national rights seriously. So just come on over, take the mick, come into the country. We won't do anything about it. So we are continually sending the signal to these criminal gangs and the men who use the criminal gang services. We're sending them the signal, come here. We won't do anything about it. It's such a lethal message to be sending out.
Well, you're not the only one that takes that view. Here's a voice note from Dan.
Good morning, Mark. It's Dan from Kent. Think of apples. We have red, we have green ones. Now imagine we started importing a different coloured apple from somewhere into our country, and then those apples turned out to be poisonous. Only some though. We don't know what ones they are. They were making our people sick. They were a danger to our communities. We'd stop importing them, or we'd allow them in until we found a way of finding out which ones were the bad apples. But that's no different to illegal immigration. We're allowing all these undocumented men come into our country, and then we allow them to run freely amongst our communities. There's no different.
No different indeed, Dan. Thank you for that. I'm so grateful for these voice notes because they're preserving my mental health, so I'm not on my own and thinking this is complete madness. Jacqueline says, good morning, Mark, and good morning, Brendan. Just a thought, how can these illegal immigrants claim human rights when the majority claim they're not from Europe? I thought it was the European Court of Human Rights. Doesn't the European in the title mean anything? Just a thought from Jackie in Stoke-on-Trent. Well, that would be common sense, Jackie, but we don't have that, do we? This has global implications, this legal framework. Dave says, good morning, Mark. I've worked all my life. I'm 62. If I lose my job, I won't look for another one and sign on. Your guest Linda speaks of an ageing population. How many of those who have never paid in will get a better pension than me? That's Dave in Lancashire. Good morning, Mark, says Alan, UK taxpayer here. I've been paying my taxes since the 80s. Is there any human rights lawyer to help me sue the government for spaffing my taxes on illegal migrants and not the public services that we so desperately need, such as fixing our roads? What about Sam, who says Starmer is so busy patting himself on the back for surviving last week and strutting around like a damn peacock. He's got no understanding of just how fed up we are with him and his shambolic government. Brendan, the Prime Minister does want to remain in number 10. He's clinging to his political life, isn't he? But the bottom line is that this issue about illegal immigration is something that crosses the political spectrum. Do you see any circumstances in which the Prime Minister will act when it comes to ECHR or the boats?
No, absolutely not. I don't think he has either the will to do so or even the cojones or just the basic everyday nous to do something about this problem. You know, Keir Starmer is fundamentally a human rights lawyer who ended up in number 10. He held all these views for a period of time, you know, that we should weaken borders and we should sacralize the rights of these people who come from overseas. That's the bread and butter of his section of society. That's what they think. So whether he has jettisoned those views or still holds them, that is a bit of a mystery to all of us. But, you know, people are so angry about this. And I think the political class are on a hiding to nothing if they don't recognize how angry ordinary people are about this problem. And you know who's most angry? Legal migrants to this country. You know, there are many well-established legal migrant communities in this country. I come from one. My parents are immigrants. They came to London in 1970.
Me too.
I grew up in an immigrant community with people from Indian heritage, Irish heritage, of course, Greeks, Italians. And these were hardworking people who, for the most part, really appreciated the fact that Britain gave them somewhere to live and somewhere to work and somewhere to have their kids educated. Those kinds of communities, I know this from speaking to them, are furious about the small boats issue, our broken borders, the arrival of illegal immigrants, because they know it's casting the whole question of immigration in a dark light. So there is just anger across the country amongst ordinary Brits, amongst legal migrants. People are furious about this issue and it needs to be fixed.
Meanwhile, reform opens the door, Brendan, to a patriotic election pact with the Conservatives if it means keeping a left-wing coalition out of power. What's the story here?
Yeah, this is so interesting because if you look at the headlines, it would seem that Reform and the Tories are just at loggerheads. You know, there's a bitter rivalry between them. And I'm sure there is. You know, there's no love lost between Nigel Farage and Kemi Badenoch and vice versa. But it seems that Reform might be open to doing a patriotic pact if it came to a situation where Reform didn't get enough seats to form a government. And I don't think they will. You know, a lot can change in the next 2 or 3 years, and I'm quite excited about the Reform project. But it seems unlikely they'll get enough seats to form their own government. So they might go into coalition with the Tories if that would help to keep out a coalition between Labour, the Greens, and all the rest of them. I think that's a good idea. You know, a lot can change in politics in 1 week, never mind 3 years. So we don't know what's going to happen. But I think it is so important to keep this Labour Party out of power. They are worse than useless. And as for the Greens, you know, the Green Party seems to believe in nothing except legalizing dangerous drugs and hating Israel. I mean, what else have they got going for them? It's so important that we block the path to power of those parties. And if that means a pact, then that's what it should be.
$1 million question, though. Would this be a pre- or post-election pact, Brendan? Because if the right vote is split at the ballot box at the next election, well, then by the day after, the damage is done and a left-wing coalition will have more available seats.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? Because that would then allow the left-wing coalition, so-called, to sneak into power by clubbing together quite quickly after the election. Yeah, I don't know if it would be pre or post-election, and it might not happen at all, of course. You know, there's a lot of frostiness between these two parties. And let's not forget, there is a significant wing of the Conservative Party that would never have anything to do with Nigel Farage. If you think about the old dinosaurs, I don't mean that pejoratively, but, you know, the old guard, Thatcher might have referred to them as the Wets, you know, the more liberal wing of the Conservative Party. They hate populism. They don't like Nigel Farage. They don't like reform. So it's a big ask, isn't it, for these two parties to get together. But for me, the most exciting thing in British politics at the moment is the rise of reform, because what that speaks to is ordinary people's desire for a radical shake-up of politics as we know it, especially amongst working class communities where they used to vote Labour for decades and decades. Those communities are crying out for something new, and I think that's exciting.
Do you worry, though, that reform risk over-promising and under-delivering? Rupert Lowe, for example, who set up a new political party, Brendan, has said that Nigel Farage will let people down when he becomes Prime Minister if he does.
You know, I think Rupert Lowe is an interesting character. I think his rape gang inquiry has been so important, and I was really pleased to see Kemi Badenoch engaging with that. It's so he's done great work on that in terms of getting to the heart of what is the greatest post-war scandal. But I don't think Restore Britain, his new party, I don't think it's going to sweep power. I think there's a lot of delusion amongst its supporters. They seem to Rupert Lowe. That's just not going to happen. They really need to get a grip. I do worry that Restore Britain could become almost the Your Party of the right. You know, a little bit cranky, a little bit too out there, appealing to people on the internet, but not necessarily to people in the real world. So I'm not particularly worried about Restore Britain at the moment. I could be proven wrong. I still think that if you talk to ordinary people in the country, the name on their lips is Nigel Farage. They see him as the man who could shake things up. It's possible he'll overpromise and underdeliver, as politicians have done before, but I think people are willing to take a punt on him because of how the other two parties have treated us over the past 15 years.
Brendan, a delight to see you again. We'll catch up soon. Brendan O'Neill is the chief political writer at Spiked Online. John is in Bradford. Good morning, John. Welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Yeah, good morning. My sort of question really is, you've got all these lawyers that are making a very, very good living out of doing what they're doing. And at the end of the day, why can't somebody out them? Why can't somebody out them? Because I'm pretty sure that once you start outing them and making their lives a little bit harder, they maybe might fall back a little bit on what they're trying to do, because all they're doing is bleeding the country dry. But then along with that, then hopefully the judges that are so left-wing in this country, maybe they'll get toppled as well, and some reasonable people be put in their place, because this country is sinking, it's going under. I live in Bradford, obviously, like I've said at the beginning, and I don't think I'm going to get a reform council where I live, because it's stacked full of Muslims, and fair play to them. They've overtaken Bradford. Probably 90% of the council is Muslim. We've got one lady at the top of the tree, just a figurehead. She's toothless, she's useless, and they've ruined Bradford altogether. Back when I left school in '78, it was a great place to be. Nights out were fantastic. It was the place that people would come from the whole of north of England to come on a night out. And that's all just disappeared. It's just all disappeared. And I don't know where this country is going to go. If I had the money to do it, I'd be out of this country so quick.
John, what did you make of Sir Jim Ratcliffe's comments last week that Britain has been colonised by immigrants?
It's a fair comment. At the end of the day, we've got all these people coming over on boats. We've got all these people that come across on these student visas and then bring 10, 12, 15, 20 relatives that they suddenly need to get through their college or university life, and it's just rubbish. And like I said, it goes back to the lawyers again, letting them do this, and it shouldn't be happening. Jim Ratcliffe, fair play to him. He don't deserve the backlash that he's had, and I'm sorry, but this country is getting it's got so left wing that the whole country's getting smothered.
Indeed, and of course this happened, didn't it, under the Tories and has accelerated under Labour, John. And if there are people just joining us now on Talk Breakfast at 7:23, let me give you this front page headline. The Sun newspaper exclusive, asylum farce, £500,000 phone compo for migrants. This is people that have entered the country illegally. The authorities have quite rightly taken their phone because there could be evidence of how they got here and why on the phone. They've now been able to get $6,500 each of your money, John, and mine and our viewers and listeners, $6,500 each payout, and there could be millions more to pay out when others sue. And John, your point is, let's name and shame the human rights lawyers. The bottom line is, John, this is an industry, a gold rush for an entire generation of legal professionals.
Absolutely. I mean, I sell cars for a living in Leeds. I don't work in Bradford, I live in Leeds. I work pretty hard. You know, I do 45, 50 hours a week. And I've got to be, I don't know, I've got to be very careful about what I say, but it's seemingly in the background there, people that have these positions can do what the hell they like. I can't. I've still got to pay my taxes. If I throw my phone in the river, nobody's going to give me another phone or tell me, oh, maybe it was a little bit of a slip there. Maybe you shouldn't have done that. Maybe you've got mental health. Oh, well, why didn't you go on the dove? Well, no, I'd never do that, and I've never done that. My dad came over here in 56 with the Hungarian uprising, and when he got over here, he worked and worked and worked and worked. He brought up 4 children who none of us have ever claimed a benefit in our life. We'd rather have starved than, because we're too proud. We're too proud. But my dad was proud enough that he had to go down to the outreaches of London in Stevenage to go get a job, to work Monday to Friday, leave his family, have one day with his family, and then get back on a bus to go back. And he did that for 5 years. Because, Heseltine, get on your bike and find work. And he did that. My mum has always worked all her life. They both passed away now, but in the end, they've always had this thing. And she's Irish. She came over in 56, around about the same time. They worked in a place together, and they moved up to Bradford. He was an engineer. She worked in the wool mill, which I think firmly, absolutely no health and safety really in them days when she worked. Probably killed her earlier than it should have been. So
John, briefly, if you can, because I share your view. I love this country, but I do feel it's going down the toilet. By the way, those human rights lawyers, they're just benefiting from a stupid legal framework that we've got to exit, which is the ECHR. Then they would have no work, John. Briefly, if you can, John, at 26 minutes past 7 on a Monday morning, can the country be saved? Is there hope?
The only way that I can see it happening is possibly through a reform government, really. Conservatives are just going to try their best to get back into power. That's never, ever going to happen, at least for the next 12 years. Labour will not either. This thing that I've heard this morning about maybe reform over-promising, under-delivering, you've got to start somewhere.
John.
It's going to have to take a little bit of a while to get there, but I think they can still do it. But they have to be tough, hard line, and when these lawyers come out the woodwork again, they need to be shut down.
John, what a brilliant call. I understand it was your first time calling Talk. I'm privileged to have had your company for a few minutes. You speak so much sense. Keep the faith, big guy. Change is coming. And John feels that a reform UK government is the ultimate and last roll of the dice for the country. Can this country be saved? Let me know your thoughts. £500,000 phone compensation for migrants. You couldn't make it up. We'll bring a journalist at the newspaper that broke that story next.
I have a message tonight for the incredible people of Greenland. And if you choose, we welcome you into the United States of America.
That is why I said the use of tariffs against allies is completely wrong.
You know, the fact that they had a boat land there 500 years ago doesn't mean that they own the land. We're not going to have Russia or China occupy Greenland. So we're going to be doing something with Greenland, either the nice way or the more difficult way.
Any decision about the future status of Greenland belongs to the people of Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark alone.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
7:30 Talk Breakfast, Mark Dolan with you until 10. Happy Monday, one and all. Is this government embarked on a £40 billion Brexit betrayal? I'll be asking Ian Duncan-Smith live at 8 on the show. Exclusive here on Talk Breakfast. But what about this? Speaking of exclusives, the Sun newspaper, asylum farce. 500k phone compo for migrants. You won't believe this story. More than 70 boat migrants who had mobile phones seized when reaching the UK have won payouts totalling £500,000. High Court judges ruled that nabbing the phones and data was illegal and in breach of European human rights laws. It's feared that 1,300 further migrants may apply for compensation. The sum could run to millions. Let's get reaction from a journalist at the paper that broke the story. Thomas Godfrey is the news reporter at The Sun. Good morning, Thomas.
Good morning, Mark.
This story has got my viewers and listeners spitting with rage. The messaging of this is a disaster. You break the law by coming into the country. The authorities take your phone because there might be important evidence on there. They get to sue. They get a payout.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just a staggering sort of state of affairs when people who come into the country illegally, and this is before 2020 when the policy changed, because those human rights lawyers who have now won hundreds of thousands of pounds in compensation already and may now win millions because of how many cases this could retrospectively apply to, they made the point in 2020 that they were going to sue, and it means that we had to change the law. But before that, when asylum seekers came in at Dover, at the border, their phones were seized, because when you think about how these people come to the country, they are dealing with human traffickers all the while. There are messages, there are bank transfers, there is a trail of evidence about how they arrived. And so it's not necessarily making a point of targeting them as individuals, it's actually targeting the infrastructure which has allowed them to enter Britain illegally. And what do our border force get for that? Well, they get having to spend a huge sum of taxpayers' money, £750,000 more than the £500,000 in compensation already agreed, on actual legal fees to take this through the High Court. And now we have the prospect of 1,300 more people applying for payouts, which they're almost guaranteed to get. I mean, the situation is summed up quite well in the paper when we call it a farce.
Most definitely it's a farce. The authorities are clear that a portion of these individuals, not all of them of course, but a portion may have terror links. So this has a national security implication too if we can't seize their phones, Thomas.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And of course, we aren't able to do any vetting on many of these people arriving in the country. Many of them actually throw their phones over the side of boats as they arrive, so they can't be vetted at all. They throw their phones, their documents, anything that might identify them or where they've come from, and that allows them to lie about their age, which we'll come on to in a moment. But actually, the ones who do arrive, it is very important, I think, that these people are asked questions about their background and that we do any investigating that we can into who these people might be before allowing them to remain in the country, especially remain in the country in an asylum hotel or in military accommodation. It feels like common sense, but of course, when there's any claim under the ECHR, which we've seen used so much in the last few years, it's sort of been dragged out of the window in which it was originally interpreted, I think it's fair to say. And we've seen it used for so many asylum and immigration cases. That right to a private and family life clause, which is the one under which these payouts have been sanctioned. Now, look, I don't want my phone being searched. I'm sure nobody does, and I don't think it's fair to just nab people's phones when there's no cause to do so. But if it is going to help smash the gangs, as Keir Starmer told us about 100,000 times before the last election, then why shouldn't we?
Why shouldn't we indeed? This from Ian. Interesting message, Thomas. He says, good morning, Mark. Isn't it ironic that a migrant nicks my phone and I get nothing? It costs me hundreds. We take their phone from an illegal immigrant. We give them thousands. Make it make sense, says Ian in Essex. This from Trevor in Boston. The country is so broken, they may as well take the word great away from Great Britain. This does make us a laughing stock, doesn't it? And this is fantastic PR for the criminal gangs who are trafficking people in the first place. This will be featuring in their TikTok videos. Come to the UK, get 3 meals a day, get a hotel, and get compensation of £6.5k.
Yeah, £6,587 a go. I mean, you're right, they'll be putting this in the brochures in Calais that they're going around in the camps. I mean, it's just absolutely bizarre. So, I mean, the sort of key point as well is that there's another £50,000 we've given out, which are without prejudice agreements, which is where the government doesn't admit wrongdoing but still pays you. I don't know how that works as such. All of these asylum seekers, this sort of genesis of this is 3 different claims by anonymous asylum seekers.
Yeah.
But what these lawyers have worked out, and they've got on the sort of taxpayer-funded gravy train, as you say, is that these 3 cases, the circumstances in these three cases, apply to so many more of these people. And so it is like an advert, basically. We're going to get those sort of PPI-era adverts. You know, did you enter the UK on a small boat between 2018 and 2020? If so, there's £6,500 waiting for you, all funded, of course, by us. I mean, look, the total bill here could go up to £8 million, and that's £8 million that could be spent in almost any other way, and it would be a far better use of money.
How many school teachers is that for a year? 8 million. Unbelievable. Thomas, before we let you go, the Sun newspaper, you and your team are outstanding on illegal immigration and the shocking sort of legal racket that underpins it. But what about this? The Sun have revealed that 40% of illegal immigrants claim to be children. They were found to be adults when challenged. It's believed that thousands of illegal immigrants are pretending to be under 18 to claim special refugee rights, making it harder to deport them. You've got a development on this. What's the latest?
Yeah, you're right. It is far harder, obviously, to remove anyone who's entered the country and claim asylum if they are a child. But that's just how the laws are, and that is an incentive for many people. Not all. There are many people who arrive as children legitimately, but I mean, what we have now to reveal is that the Home Office in the last 18 months since Labour took power have not published the data, have not released the figures on how many asylum seekers have been caught out in lies while pretending to be children when they're actually adults. And this is really important because it did run into the thousands before, in the years before. And also, the figure is, of course, that 40% of those who are asked, who are questioned, who are quizzed on what their true age is, turn out to be over 18, in some cases actually over 30, and still trying to pass themselves off as a 16 or 17-year-old. This has sparked claims of a cover-up. The Home Office states because they're introducing a new casework system, a new data management platform. That's now run on for 19 months, and I don't think it's unfair for people to suggest that these numbers have to be released for us to have the full picture of what's going on at the border, because even under the Conservatives, yes, the numbers weren't pretty, the numbers did keep getting worse, but at least they were published. Sunlight as the best disinfectant, and that meant we could all criticise them, as we did for many years. Why aren't Labour giving everyone the same opportunity?
Thomas, keep up the very important journalism. Thomas Godfrey is a news reporter at the Sun newspaper that have exposed a shocking legal loophole which has allowed illegal immigrants to sue the UK government for compensation for the authorities taking their phones when they arrive in Dover. Here's a voice note from Damien.
Morning, Mark. Damien from Milton Keynes here. Just going on this new information brought to light about the migrants getting a payoff for illegally breaking into the United Kingdom. I have to feel that I believe, and this is amongst a lot of my peers and partners and friends, that Keir Starmer and Rachel from accounts are systematically tightening the noose around every British taxpayer's neck. Cheers, mate. Great show as always. Strange to hear you on so early in the morning, but thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Damien. Well, look, that was another brilliant voice note. Your feedback is everything, and it's people power that will save the country. Did you know that? The public need to wake up. We have a great country, we have a great history, a great tradition, a great population, but we are going in completely the wrong direction. We are bound by these ridiculous treaties, these laws that make you, myself, and the whole team here at Talk, second-class citizens in our own country. If I drink 11 pints of beer and drive and crash the car, I can assure you the cops will take my phone. If I go for a little bit of time at Her Majesty's pleasure, my phone will go into a clear bag. I can't sue anyone, but if you enter the country illegally, you've got all the rights. Make it make sense. More on this next, 7:40 Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
7:42. Happy Monday, one and all. Mark Dolan with you on Talk Breakfast. In for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle for the whole of this week. Lovely to have your company. A shocking headline in the Sun newspaper. 500k phone compo for migrants. It could cost us millions as illegal immigrants sue the UK government for the authorities taking their mobile phones when they arrive here, even though their mobile phones may contain information about how they got here, why they're here, and any potential terror links that they have, as well as any ambitions to work within the black economy. Here's a voice note from Steve. Take it away, Steve.
Morning, Mark. This is Steve in Hearts. It's my understanding that the government has directed money from the foreign aid budget to pay for illegal immigrants in the UK, the hotels and such, pocket money that they get and the phones and all the rest of it. If we're not spending money on countries where these people are trying to get away from, to help them become a better place to live that people don't have to flee from, then surely we're perpetuating the problem. It seems to me like a political decision. Let's let those countries stay terrible so that the people will carry on coming here. I honestly believe that the Tories and Labour want these people to come.
Well, Steve, you're entitled to your view. If you look at this Labour government and how they've wrecked the economy and destroyed growth and provoked inflation and have brought back the old enemy of unemployment, it feels like the economic damage is deliberate. And yes, open borders, it feels like a project. Why else would they do it? It's certainly not in the interests of the British government. Steve, you're entitled to speculate as to why this is happening and whether it's on purpose. It certainly makes no sense. Keep those voice notes coming. Isabel Oakeshott is Talk's international editor. Good morning, Isabel.
Good morning. Well, what a cracking scoop from the Sun this morning with that story about the mobile phone compensation. I read it. I genuinely almost couldn't believe it. But it does seem that every day we're getting these astonishing stories. And the question that I have, I mean, there are so many questions, but I really want to know which firms of lawyers are involved in this action, because I think they should be named and shamed. I think that perhaps we're going to have to look at some kind of catch-all new legislation. So you know how with the HMRC, there is a catch-all legislation that is designed to prevent, in general, tax evasion. Well, maybe we need to have something that prevents UK lawyers essentially acting contrary to the national interest, because a case like this is quite disgracefully anti-British. It is so obviously against the national interest. And as Thomas was saying earlier, there are national security implications. Frankly, I don't care about the privacy of illegal immigrants who come across the channel in small boats and break into our country. I couldn't care less what they've got on their phones in terms of, you know, their photographs, their private numbers, whatever. The issue with removing those phones is giving ourselves every bit of information we can have in order to track down the people that they have been dealing with to get to the UK. And until we start getting really serious about that, how on earth are we going to, as Keir Starmer puts it, smash the gangs? We're just not.
Most definitely. Well, for those joining us, the headline in The Sun, exclusive asylum fast, 500k phone compo for migrants. These are people that have entered the country illegally. The authorities have rightly taken their phones, apprehended their phones because they're criminals. And on those phones could be terror links, details on where they're planning to work in the black economy, where they're being accommodated, which criminals they were in touch with that got them trafficked in the first place. Therefore, these mobile phones are a key piece of evidence. And now these folk are getting $6.5 grand each by way of compensation. The bill, Isabel, could run to millions. The truth is, though, Isabel, those human rights lawyers are just seizing an opportunity presented to them by the ECHR. And that's at the heart of this.
Well, I think most of our listeners and viewers are agreed that we need to clearly we need to come out of the ECHR. It's a complete travesty that some 10 years after senior Tory politicians, for example, Theresa May, started talking about withdrawing from the ECHR, we're still talking about withdrawing from the ECHR. We know that this Labour government isn't going to do it. The Conservatives have waited until they're in opposition to then have a long ponder about whether they want to do it or not. And we've heard from Robert Jenrick, now a member of Reform, that essentially a very large number, if not the majority of the Tory parliamentary party don't want to come out of the ECHR. We can be sure the Greens don't want to come out of the ECHR. So at this point, only Reform can be relied upon to do it if they win the next election. And that's 3 years away. We've got another 3 years of these absolutely appalling anti-British legal cases. And no lawyer has to take advantage of that opportunity. Lawyers should simply not be doing this. They should not be lining their own pockets with cases that are so obviously detrimental to their fellow countrymen.
Exactly, but lawyers will always exploit loopholes, won't they, Isabel? If you were a lawyer, you'd be doing the same thing. It's an industry, it's a gold rush.
I assure you I wouldn't, actually, Mark. I assure you that if I were a lawyer, I would not be bringing cases against my own country on behalf of illegal immigrants, trying to get them compensation. I totally disagree with you.
No, I agree. Well, you're very ethical, Isabel, but where there's an incentive, people will exploit that, won't they?
Well, a small number of people will, but it was ever thus. You know, where there are criminal opportunities, criminals will take them. Lawyers have plenty of other opportunities to make money, although I'm sure that they're feeling under pressure from AI and so on. They don't have to go down this route, and they really shouldn't go down this route. Just as, you know, if I happen to own big properties, I wouldn't make money accommodating migrants. You know, there are certain things that I think you just don't do. There are other ways to make money.
Well, I completely agree with you, but if only they had your ethics. How do you see this playing out in the next few years? I mean, this bill could run to millions, couldn't it? And it's a massive public relations coup for the criminal gangs that ship people over here in the first place.
Well, I see no end to small boat crossings. I think this spring and summer there will be bumper numbers coming over. We know that the number of crossings is limited not at all by fear of the authorities. It's limited simply by supply and demand of boats to take people across the channel, and also the weather conditions. There are far more people who want to get on these boats and are waiting in the camps of Calais and Dunkirk to come over to the UK than there are actually vessels to get them to the UK. That is really, really concerning. So the numbers will keep coming. I think that the there are plenty coming in other ways as well, whether it's in the back of lorries or on trains or however. There are multiple other methods of getting to the UK illegally. The whole scandal of mass uncontrolled migration, both legal and illegal, will continue, and that is only going to make our country more angry and more divided. And people are fed up of hearing Keir Starmer and his colleagues talking about diversity being our strength. You know, it absolutely isn't. What we have is a country that is deeply fractured and angry. And I think we're in a very dangerous place.
We most definitely are. Ken in Oldham, how and who decided that £6,500 is fair compensation and not 87 quid? He raises a point. I mean, they pluck these numbers out of thin air, don't they? A quick word, if I can, while I've got you, Isabel, on the prospect of a left-wing coalition keeping Nigel Farage out of power at the next election, a possible deal between the Greens, Labour, the Lib Dems and potentially the SNP. Is a patriotic election pact between the Conservatives and Reform UK the only way to save this country?
Well, we're so far out from any election, unfortunately, that I don't think anyone has to be making those types of decisions at this point, and no one is. That's the truth. Reform intends to crush the Conservatives, and Reform has almost done so already. There aren't really any true Conservatives left in the Conservative Party. So Reform intends to win the next election in its own right, but it is entirely legitimate to fear a ghastly rainbow coalition of the left. That is a genuine threat. And it will come down to, much nearer the time, what is the evidence that these smaller left-wing parties are going to come up with a cogent, coherent strategy that they will sell to voters, their own voters, in terms of tactical voting? Or will that all fall apart at the seams much nearer to the time? I think if there's compelling evidence that these smaller parties are going to have a kind of pact with each other, then of course, if Reform isn't ready, it hasn't got to the point where the Conservatives are no longer going to deprive Reform of seats, then people are going to have to be pragmatic. I think that's what was being said on the media yesterday. I think it was by Zia Youssef. But we are miles off that. Reform, let's just to be really clear here, Reform intends to win the next election in its own right, and it is heading in that direction. You know, it's led in more than 200 polls in recent months.
Will Nigel be upset or put out by Zia's comments?
I didn't watch Zia on the media yesterday, but Zia is a fantastic spokesman for the party. You know, he's out there all day, every day on the media. And, you know, his ability to handle the trickiest questions leaves even some of us very experienced commentators in quite some admiration. So I don't think anyone's going to be upset.
Isabel, fantastic to see you. Have an excellent Monday. My thanks to Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor. Next up, the Bank of England says that gender-fluid male staff can wear eyeshadow and high heels to the office. That's next.
just don't think that we should be indoctrinating children at such a young age to think that we should be friends with these
romantic
migrants.
sort of messages to, you know...
Yes, yeah.
I mean, they could use that...
Strange. It's sick.
They could use that in court and say, well, our client thought, you know, it was all right because they got these Valentine's cards from children.
I wouldn't put it past the courts. Women and girls, they're the ones at the front lines of this. They should not be forced to go and write Valentine's Day cards to these asylum seekers.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Top of the morning, it is Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan in for Jeremy Kyle all of this week. Great to have your company. You're going to love this story. The Bank of England, which we own, don't forget, says that gender-fluid male staff can wear eyeshadow and high heels to the office in a new dress code. Well, full disclosure, I'm wearing flat shoes this morning and very little makeup. Let's get reaction from Suzanne Evans, journalist and broadcaster. Good morning, Suzanne.
Good morning, Mark. Oh, I think you've had people choking into their cornflakes at this news. Surely, I mean, honestly, have they completely lost the plot? I say, let's go back, Bank of England, to the days of bowler hats, dark suits, ties, and a rolled up black umbrella. Far more sensible than this abject nonsense. I mean, can you just imagine some major foreign investor or some foreign dignitary visiting the Bank of England, and there in front of them, lo and behold, is some pantomime dame walking around the office? It's just not going to do the Bank of England's reputation any good. It's not going to do the country's reputation any good. It's absolute nonsense. And I think what really angers me as well is this is going to be very difficult for women working at the Bank of England when they see basically a bloke potentially wearing a beard and a dress, looking like a bloke in drag, basically, aping some parody of womanhood. I think that's what really annoys me about this. It is potentially making the office, I think, an unsafe space for women.
It's shocking, and I think your remarks are damning but true, Suzanne. And Barclays Bank, Santander, NatWest, they can do what they like, can't they? They're private organisations. The Bank of England is government property. It's a public... It's in the public sector, and therefore it shouldn't be happening on the watch of Her Majesty's or His Majesty's government. It's a public institution, and this has big implications. By the way, their job is to concentrate on inflation, which is still far too high.
That's right, absolutely. I mean, the Bank of England's record on the job it's supposed to be doing in recent years has been absolutely atrocious, arguably. But here they are. The Bank of England is basically one of Britain's great institutions. Yeah. And it really shouldn't, I don't think, behaving in this way at all. As I said, it also should be protecting the women who work there. You know, there's still, I think, some chances are if you work in finance in the city, you're probably going to be a bloke rather than a woman. This is not going to do anything either to encourage women to work in the industry. As I said, I would find it very intimidating if I was forced to work every day with a man who was trying to dress up like some parody of a woman in high heel, short skirts, much too much makeup, possibly a wig, and wearing a beard. I just would feel very, very uncomfortable about that. And I think a lot of women would. And after all, after the Supreme Court ruling, we're supposed to be protecting women in the workplace. And this is it's just so wrong. I really think the way in which the Bank of England says it's interpreted equality law is wrong. And it should be reversing this decision.
Unacceptable, Suzanne, from a public institution. My thanks to you, Suzanne. We'll see you soon. Suzanne Evans, journalist and broadcaster. You couldn't make it up. Welcome to the clown world. Well, is a 40 billion quid Brexit betrayal in the offing? I'll be asking Ian Duncan Smith next.
This journey of me following the migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning, all around the clock, to late at night, to the point where, you know, on buses, on trains, through streets, at every key point, French military police and the French police, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there. I was sat in the tent and he was showing me through photos of his phone, scrolling through. This was barbaric, horrific stuff. Blokes going through walls in vehicles and then jumping out and shooting everyone. You know, his WhatsApp picture was him with a mask on, with a gun like that.
You're in a tent with this guy?
I'm in a tent with this guy, and actually he's just showing me this stuff. I'm just thinking, this is not the kind of bloke you want to be coming to the UK.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Past 8, I'm Mark Dolan, in for Jeremy Kyle all of this week. Great to have your company. A busy 2 hours to come. Breaking this morning, £500,000 worth of compensation has been paid out to illegal immigrants who successfully sued the UK government for taking their phones when they arrived in Dover. All because of, you guessed it, European human rights laws. Now, many more could sue, and the bill could reach millions of pounds. How do we tackle this problem? Meanwhile, in another worrying development for the economy, the government workers' rights reforms have pushed a third of employers to cut hiring. So is Britain on the brink of an unemployment surge? Also this morning, are we stuck with Starmer as the Labour Party struggles to get behind any of the key leadership candidates? If so, if it is Starmer for the next 3 years, what are the implications for the country? Now, my priority is to get your opinions on the national radio and television airwaves. My phone number is 0344 499 1000. Your reaction to this story: illegal immigrants, they've broken the law to get here. The authorities, quite rightly, apprehend their mobile phones because there could be evidence of terror links on there. There could be an explanation as how they got here and what their ambitions are on arrival. Also, details of the black economy. There's an awful lot on those phones that is important and needs to be seen by the authorities. They are suing the government, $6.5 grand each. Where does this go? Your reaction, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note, and as the saying goes, let's talk. We'll kick off with a voice note on this mobile phone scandal, and this is Tony. All yours, Tony.
Morning, Mark. Tony from North Somerset. Great show this morning. On the subject of the Sun headline about the mobile phones and the asylum seekers and the illegal immigration thing, the figures that you've bandied about, £500,000, rising to nearly £8 million. How many potholes would that money fill? How many nurses would that employ? How much would that go towards recruiting new doctors and army recruitment drives as well?
Tony, you're absolutely right. The cost of illegal immigration, as you say, the payouts alone, millions and millions of pounds would fix our rather broken infrastructure. You're so right about that. And what about the cost of accommodating these people? It's billions per year. What about the cost of policing those venues at which they are residing? What about the cost of these people, the majority of whom will receive asylum, from our incredibly soft touch legal framework. You couldn't make it up. Let's take a call. This is Peter in Sussex. Good morning, Peter.
Morning, Mark. Nice to speak to you.
You too. Thanks for your call. When you woke up this morning and you got the kettle on and you hear me telling you that illegal immigrants are getting compensation of $6,500 each because we took their phone, what do you think of that?
I just felt absolutely sick, to be honest. Absolutely sick. It's like every week something else comes out. They're getting freebies and whatever.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of us are just speechless now and so angry. It's just. I mean, I speak to your producer,
Damien. Yeah.
I mean, I do between 45, 50 hours a week. I'm 64 years old. I've actually voted Tory since I was 17 under Margaret Thatcher, up until the last election, and this has been a Tory thing as well as a Labour thing. It's like handing over the baton of absolutely treachery to this country. And it feels like I just want to come home and say, right, that's it, I've had enough. I don't want to pay no taxes, no council tax. I don't want to do nothing, because what is the point? I mean, I'll tell you a little backstory. About 20 years ago, I had to have a little operation on my left wrist. And once the operation was done, and I knew that I'd have a few weeks off, the surgeon said to me, here's a form for your council tax.
Right.
And I said, oh, okay. So what do I do? So we just fill it in, and then you'll get, because you'll be off 6 to 8 weeks, because my arm was in plaster, and I'm left-handed. And I said, okay. So I filled it in, sent it off to my local council in Lewis. And my God, at the time I was asking for about something like £200 of council tax for the month. I always put money by, obviously for wages and things like that.
Yeah.
And they got a letter back saying, sorry, we need proof of your thingy. So they wanted bank statements. And because I had some money in my bank that I put there for the reason of being off,
yes,
they said, we can't give you anything. And that was £224 something. That was all I was asking. I didn't ask for it, but the surgeon gave me the form to give to my council. They refused me £224. And I've been self-employed since 1982. I've paid my tax, paid my stamp, done everything right. I've not been on the dole. I've had hard times and good times. And when that happened, and now I hear all this, I'm thinking, what is the point? I think it's going to come to a point where everybody will say, right, I'm not going to pay no tax, no council tax, because the country will come to a standstill if that happened. But that's what they're pushing us to do. And also, it's going to, I mean, back in the day, people were doing cash-in-hand jobs to avoid tax. You saw it quite open on a building site. But that is what this government's leading us all to.
It is crazy, isn't it? And one message I get constantly, Peter, is that my viewers and listeners feel like second-class citizens in their own country. You couldn't get 200 quid support for council tax because, of course, the incentives, Peter, are so wrong. I really appreciate your call, Peter, who works 50, 60 hours a week, and the tax that Peter pays on his hard-earned income won't even touch the sides when it comes to the compensation bill for criminals who quite rightly have had their phones apprehended when they land on our shores. Let's get some common sense. I'm delighted to welcome one of the most respected and senior politicians in the country, former Conservative Party leader, former Work and Pensions Secretary, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith. Sir Ian, your reaction to the news that 70 at the moment illegal immigrants are receiving compensation of $6,500. The bill could run to millions. What do you make of this?
Well, it's a case, I'm afraid, that demonstrates yet again our legal system is in a complete mess. And the way that we treat people who shouldn't be here with full rights does make, I think, absolutely no sense at all. The nature of the way that we see this is being completely torn apart. And the reality is that we've had so much migration that the cost of this is absolutely huge, as you just said. So the reality, I think, has to be that if you're here illegally, you're here illegally. And that means, therefore, you don't have the rights that everybody else has when you arrive until you've actually, if you ever, get the right to stay. And that's the whole point about it. So anyone that who comes on that basis comes and isn't required, therefore is an alien, and I think should be either shipped away as soon as we can, which would be in the Rwanda arrangement, which I still believe was the best way to do it, or for that matter, while they're here, They get the very basic needs, but not the whole rights that a normal citizen who is here legally should have.
So, Ian, were the Conservatives too slow to wake up to the problem of the ECHR?
I think we were, generally, yes. I think the reality is we have I certainly, and I know loads of my colleagues have, a very strong sense of the rights of law, and that law protects people against governments and others who would make sure that they get bullied and do as they want.
Yes.
So there are protections in it. But the problem has been this clash with the scale of the amount of people that are coming in. It is the big problem. And I think the reality now, Kemi Badenoch, to be fair to her, has come forward and said, well, we're going to get out of this, because the only way we can ensure that those who come illegally and who shouldn't be here will be shipped away and not be here. And the lesson from that was in Australia, where Australia said mostly to Vietnam boat people, when you arrive, you're not going to arrive on our shores, you're going to arrive somewhere else, and then we're going to send you back as soon as we believe that you have any rights or no rights to be in Australia. We should have learnt from that. We wanted to, but what got in the way was every time somebody took them to court, and we lost the ability to send them away, and I think that is ridiculous. By the way, it happens across British citizens as well, lots and lots of problems.
Operation Sovereign Borders, of course, in Australia, 2013.
Yeah, it worked for them, and it stopped overnight, because no one's going to risk their life to head in that direction if they think that there is a very strong chance that they're not going to be allowed to stay. And we saw this when we introduced originally the Rwanda scheme before the courts got their teeth into it. You saw thousands upon thousands of migrants going to Ireland and trying to flee Britain for the very simple reason they thought they were about to be shipped away. And I think there you have the absolute point that I'm making.
100%. And the Irish Taoiseach said at the time that the Rwanda plan is driving immigrants over to the Republic. And that was before Rwanda had actually kicked in Syria, and it was just a threat of Rwanda that was already proving to be a disincentive. Do you know how Italy get away with ignoring the ECHR, given that they're in the EU and are part of the ECHR? Italy has cut boat crossings by 60%. The French have their own rather narrow interpretation of the ECHR too. Is that an issue?
Well, I think the issue is that parts of Europe do not quite see legal constraints in the same way that we do. The mistake was really very much, I think, that Tony Blair introduced the ECHR and bound it into UK law, which meant that judges can make immediate decisions that bind governments. Governments and Parliament is supreme, and therefore we have to restore that idea of supremacy. We make law, and judges eventually have to interpret it. Well, this ECHR has now been interpreted in its entirety and in its extremes by judges, not by Parliament. And so I have no idea really why Italy gets away, except that I know it takes a while for these cases to come back to them. But the reality is, I think, that every single country in Europe, and anyone that I've met as politicians, all of them are saying the same thing, that this whole legal position for people who come over here illegally has to change. So we're going to be doing the right thing. If this government had a brain in its head, and I don't think that's very much a case, then they would actually recognise the only way that you will get control back over migration is to have control over the law. And that is critical, and we don't at the moment, and they won't, because look at them. I mean, that's full of human rights lawyers like Starmer. Hermer is his Attorney General, and they made a living even pursuing British soldiers after engagement in Afghanistan and Iraq, ruthlessly on false evidence. But that was going on all on the basis that somehow people had the human rights in that war-torn country and where they were trying to kill our soldiers.
The French have a very different attitude towards illegal immigrants. They're housed in tents, not hotels. I've got plenty of viewers and listeners, Sir Ian, who would like to see us ban legal aid for illegal immigrants and actually to sanction law firms acting against the British interest.
Well, as I come back to the point that I made earlier, which is quite straightforward, which is if you are here illegally with an unproven right to remain, then I think the law, in many senses, has to be different for somebody who is here legally, either as a British citizen or because they've been allowed to stay for other reasons. And listen, a big supporter of the idea that there are some people that we do need to support who have either supported us or who have genuine issues and problems and brutal regimes. But there is a limit to what we do on that. And I think, therefore, the idea is that it should be left to Parliament to make that decision. And I think this whole idea of giving people the same rights as the UK citizens have is wrong. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about coming out of the ECHR.
Sir Ian, you are an experienced government minister, former leader of the Conservative Party, ideologically consistent, a robust Conservative to your core. Reform UK have said they're going to axe the target for net zero. It's over. They're going to unilaterally stop the boats by tearing up the ECHR, rescinding the Human Rights Act and looking again at the Refugee Convention. They're going to reduce tax, create a pro-business environment. You've got until May to defect. When's it happening?
Oh, I'm never going to defect. Don't worry about that. I believe that the difference that people, the choice will have to make when it comes to being in government is a party that knows how to govern and does have the policies.
Knows how to govern badly, Sir Ian.
Well, you know, it depends which way you look at it. But when I was working pensions, we got the whole issue of spiralling costs under control. We had the lowest number of workless households since records began. We reduced the burden of the expenditure on the taxpayers dramatically, never been done before. All of those things we managed to do.
Universal credit, Sir Ian, is your great political legacy among many others, but that was a previous era of conservatism. That was 2010 to 2016. Under Boris Johnson and woke Theresa May, the wheels fell off, and many of my viewers and listeners that admire you cannot stand the Conservatives and will never forgive.
Well, I hope that that is possible to change. I understand mistakes were made. I have to tell you that we do often look at this and forget what happened during COVID. COVID punched a massive hole through everything. No government has ever faced a situation like COVID since the Second World War. It was huge in its entirety. And so the reality is that we have to pick the pieces up from that.
And Ukraine. I mean, Ukraine cost us 50 billion, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly. We're supporting Ukraine. I've been out there 5 or 6 times. I've been up to the front. I know that this is a disaster and it's terrible on those people, the poor people who live there. So we're right to be supporting it. So these two issues that you're talking about were huge and made a huge difference. The question now is, can you learn from that and how you might have done it differently? And next time round, you make sure you understand that. And I believe that under Kemi, we have somebody who is capable of being able to make that decision. And my purpose in life is not to govern for myself. It's not to be back in government because it gives you frills and special deals. It's about doing the right thing for the British people. It's been my whole purpose in Parliament, my whole purpose in giving up everything else to be here. And I am here in Parliament for the very simple reason that the British people deserve the best. And I believe we can give them that. And I would like to think that those who are in reform will recognise that in due course, and that we don't have these divisions that take place on those who have common sense and would support governments who will do the right thing.
Do you anticipate some sort of pre- or post-election arrangement with Reform, between the Reform and the Conservatives, Sir Ian, given that if you look at the polls, the Conservatives will not win the next election?
You'll forgive me if I don't look at the future. I've given that up. Every time I try and say what the future holds, I invariably get it wrong, and it's just depressing. So all I say to you is, all we can do in life is serve our country and do the right thing as far as we possibly can and let the cards fall as they may.
Sir Ian, let me ask you, as a former Work and Pensions Secretary, your reaction to the devastating headline in today's Times newspaper: more than a third of employers are going to cut back on hiring because of the government's workers' rights reforms. This is Socialism Doesn't Work, chapter 377.
Well, I think we learnt this lesson when the Labour governments were in the 1970s and into the end of that, when we finally had Margaret Thatcher come through with a Conservative government, and we changed and put laws in to control trade union rights and workers' rights. And the reality is we had more people in power and more people rather in work. And the reality for that is the lesson has been learnt. If you give people who just started rights from pretty much day one, which is what the government wanted to do, then the reality is that the costs go spiralling. The second thing, of course, and the most damaging area of rights come without responsibilities. But now the government has introduced a huge hike in the cost of hiring part-time workers. And one of the points that I made setting up Centre for Social Justice, where we try and help people get back into work and where we understand their difficulties and try and work for that, I've always said work should always pay better than welfare. And the reality here is now it's not, because when you start the tax level, and I think it's £5,000 of payment, then you realise straight away that people won't hire people part-time. They're too expensive. So now what you're getting is a rise in unemployment for the very simple reason that for most small businesses, they simply cannot afford to have people start their working life part-time, and therefore those jobs are going, and that is an absolute unmitigated disaster for those small businesses who won't be able to expand, and secondly, for those people who would love to start work on a part-time basis, may have caring responsibilities, it may be their first job, and learn and understand how work works for them, and then slowly be able to expand into full-time work. That sort of process is now gone. It's like kicking the legs out from underneath somebody who's wobbly from their feet, and that is what the government is doing to people who should and want to be in work and to live off their own earnings, not off welfare.
So, Ian, we know you have a packed schedule. Finally and briefly, we talked about your legacy, and I think notwithstanding my viewers and listeners' concerns about what the Tories did in power, I don't think that you'll be found wanting as a consistent and robust Conservative. I've mentioned the welfare reforms that have proved to be so successful and effective for the country, many of which are still in place. There's also the small matter of our departure from the European Union, something that you were gunning for many years. I suspect that tearing up the ECHR is easier, given that we're not in the EU. But we've also got the small matter of a potential £40 billion bill if we slowly go back. Rachel Reeves's insistence that closer ties with the EU represents a big prize will, in fact, cost us a fortune. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think this is madness. The British public had a vote. This Labour government promised that if they were elected, they would not try and take us back into Europe. The problem is the Prime Minister himself, I think, has always been keen to go back into Europe, and he's surrounded by people who want to go back into the European Union. The cost for that will be enormous. And by the way, all this rubbish about how much we're supposed to have lost by not being in the EU is completely absurd. All the figures show that there is no noticeable change at all at the time we left or even up to today. If you look across Europe, they've had huge problems. Many of them have had difficulties financially. Being in the European Union didn't change that. And bearing in mind that our majority of our trade is outside of Europe in the UK, not inside. I mean, we are the only one, I think in the whole of Europe, we're the only ones that have a trade surplus with the United States, for example, because of our financial services. So the figures do not show.
We've had higher growth than Germany since we left.
Yes, that's exactly the point. That if you look across and then get the figures correct, you realise that this has nothing to do with being in the EU. We have a trade arrangement with the EU, and therefore the trick here is to have trade arrangements with the rest of the world. They will develop for us. They are at the moment, and I think that's the way to go. We voted to leave. You can't keep revisiting it until the British public do what you want them to do. The answer is it would be an absolute appalling attack on the concept of democracy, which, of course, this government doesn't really care about at all.
If it's leveraged correctly and there's political will, does Brexit make it easier for us to stop the boats?
Well, it should do, but the key part of that is if you're in the EU, you have to be in the ECHR. It's as simple as that. So those who want to leave and want to sort this problem out, we are out. And therefore that gives us the scope to be able to make that decision about how we set our rights, our laws on human rights. And I think this is the important bit. Don't forget that if we get tied into the European Union, with it will come the obligation to remain in the ECHR. And I have to tell you, we're not a country that cheats on our obligations like some do. We're a country that by and large stands up by our obligations, and therefore we need to change those obligations.
Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, a real pleasure to have you on the programme. Thank you for giving us your valuable time. Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, former Conservative Party leader, former Work and Pensions Secretary. Let's get a voice note on this quite wild story. Illegal immigrants getting compensation because the cops took their phones when they arrived here. The ECHR is the reason that this has happened. Here's a voice note from Carl.
Hi Mark, Carl from Coventry here. Could you explain to me why it is that we seem to be quite happy to ignore our Supreme Court rulings on what's a man and what's a woman? And everyone seems to, if they want it in the workplaces and that, especially like big places, now we're just going to ignore that and carry on. But yet when a European court makes a ruling, all of a sudden, oh no, we can't, we've got to take that rule, we can't go against that. And we follow it to the letter, but we don't follow our own courts. It's just absolute crazy.
Crazy is the word. Carl, you speak for millions. You're listening to Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan in for Jeremy Kyle all of this week. We'll talk about the hot mess of a situation in which illegal immigrants are receiving compensation. 6.5 grand of your money is going to illegal immigrants by way of compensation because cops took their phones. We'll get reaction from a journalist at the paper that broke this story next.
We genuinely are on resignation watch. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Labour MPs, they say, listen, Keir, your position is untenable. This is all about appointing that rat, Peter Mandelson, who faces a criminal investigation.
Can Keir Starmer survive the Mandelson scandal? We have breaking news for you. We've just been talking about, of course, Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff. We've now had another resignation from Number 10. And Keir Starmer's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, has now also resigned. The plot is thickening. The noose is tightening.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, I think we need a new item on the show. You couldn't make it up. Breaking this morning at 8:29 on Talk Breakfast. £500,000 worth of compensation has been paid out to illegal immigrants who successfully sued the UK government for taking their phones when they arrived in Dover. £6,500 goes to each migrant. They get a big fat cheque paid for by you and I. Let's get reaction to the political editor of the newspaper that broke this story, The Sun, Jack Elston. Good morning, Jack.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well, and it's great to have you on the show. Outstanding elite-level journalism. We need to know what's going on in our country. My viewers and listeners are spitting with rage. Some people who get up in the morning, work very hard. I've got a caller earlier. He said he does 50, 60 hours a week. He pays his taxes. He doesn't want it going to compensation for people who have broken the law to get into this country, having their phones taken.
Yeah, you're totally right. And, that's what we're hearing from our readers as well. It's that fundamental breach of fairness. If you go out, if you set your alarm clock early and you put in a hard day's graft, you're being squeezed within an inch of your life. Whereas if you don't do that, either you're on benefits or you're an illegal migrant, then there seems to be, a magic money tree for you. Now, you said that you couldn't make this story up, but the depressing thing is that these sort of stories have become more depressingly routine since the migrant crisis really exploded a few years ago. And the amount of them which some reason implicate the European Convention of Human Rights seems to be becoming all the more common. And I think this story is once again clearly going to open up debate about our membership of the Strasbourg Court, because clearly now, it was created in the post-war period, but it's just been twisted out of all recognition to essentially become a political tool for activist lawyers to weaponize and subvert the intentions of our sovereign government. And, I think many people are getting fed up with that.
Most definitely. Interesting that Sir Duncan Smith, Jack, said to me that if we were still in the European Union, we wouldn't have a cat's in chance hell of exiting the ECHR.
Well, no, and despite the two institutions being separate, clearly it's all sort of part of that same sort of, European, collectiveness, which was about supranational organisations imposing their will on nation states. Now, clearly we've had two parties come out, Reform and the Tories, saying they want to leave it. While Keir Starmer is in charge, we are seeing absolutely no, not even, talk about leaving, but just, he's got an Attorney General who basically worships at the altar of the ECHR. But the amount of times, even in this government, I've heard that we're going to be cracking down on abuses of Article 8, which is the sort of the right to the family life, which is that one loophole which lawyers tend to be able to weaponize. So far, we haven't seen anything in that direction. Shabana Mahmood is talking a good game, but so far we've seen no action on that front. And I think that, the imperative now to really sort of crack down on judges in the UK misinterpreting Article 8. I mean, clearly, the right to a phone, is not sort of shouldn't be enshrined in Article 8, but because they managed to appeal to this clause, often they manage to get their way by judges. And so I think that we need more movement on this front.
Now, of course, I can caveat all of this, Jack, by saying that there are probably a majority of people that cross the channel, economic migrants trying to have a better life. They're not all rapists, murderers and terrorists. Of course not. But the issue we've got, Jack, is that we can't tell the difference between those who are just seeking a better life and others that may harm us. There are so many elements to illegal immigration, aren't there? There is the national security risk, given the fact that the authorities are concerned that a number of people crossing the channel may have terror links. Well-reported stories of attacks on our own citizens, rapes, murders, all the rest of it, truly egregious crimes. So that's a safety issue. But there's the financial cost too, isn't there? Because, for example, this mobile phone compensation thing, this could run into millions. Your paper has pointed out that the 70 boat migrants who have already received this payout, well, it could run to thousands. There's also the cost of accommodating these people, and a good percentage of those that have entered the country illegally will receive asylum, which will likely mean there'll be a cost to the taxpayer for the rest of their lives. The cost is, it's not thousands, it's not millions, it is billions.
Oh, yeah, the National Audit Office a few years ago, I think it's last year actually, produced a report which tracked the cost of migrant accommodation, both already spent and projected over a 10-year period. And the total sum was an eye-watering £15 billion.
15 billion.
15 billion, that's just for accommodation alone. And then you're right, you add in the cost of processing their applications, you add in the cost if they have to stay in this country. It is absolutely enormous. And so you have the cold, hard cash sum, which I think is incredibly egregious to most working people. But also it is that general fairness argument of people coming over, skipping the queue, and then basically getting, free bed and board. They get Aspen cards, but they have money on that as well. And so it's just this, I think, constant breach of the sort of the idea in our society where, you play by the rules, you work hard, it pays off. And it seems that so many people now are being squeezed, like the number one thing which people write into me about is the cost of living crisis, how they're struggling to make ends meet, but they're still going out to work. And it seems that, I know we're sort of broadening the point a bit, but people that aren't working, people that haven't played by the rules, there's a sense that they're getting everything. Well, if you put in a hard day's graft, you get nothing.
Most definitely. Gary has messaged the show, Jack, and said, Good morning, Mark and Jack. I think, just thinking it's £6.5 compensation. How much did the lawyers cost on top of that? Eric in Barnsley, good morning, Mark. Don't forget the figures don't include payments to human rights lawyers who are representing these people. Ban legal aid for illegal immigrants and their lawyer firms. Many people concerned about the gold rush, the industry that is human rights in this country, Jack.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a total cash cow. For lawyers weaponising this. But that is why I think the governments of all stripes, if they're going to put a stop to it. Keir Starmer told our paper about 2 years ago now, when he first came into power, that he would put a stop to the weaponisation of Article 8 claims. And what we've seen is an explosion in these claims in that time. And so, there is now, I think, an imperative for the ministers to really get tough on this, because British voters won't put up for it much longer, and that is why you're seeing, parties like Reform climbing the polls, because they have vowed to just take us out of the ECHR. Now, clearly that is going to be, that's going to be divisive for some people, but at least some sort of bringing into heel of judges who manage to weaponise these claims, and I think it needs to be done.
It definitely needs to be done. Before we let you go, Jack, the PM's been busy lately. Of course, he's fired his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, a bit of a sacrificial lamb there, given the issues he faced. He's removed Sir Chris Wormald after just a year as Cabinet Secretary, normally a post that you stay in for a decade, amid concerns that Britain's most senior civil servant was not delivering. Meanwhile, Jack, we're hearing that the Labour Party, cannot unite around one particular individual to replace Starmer. So are we stuck with Sir Keir for the foreseeable, do you think?
It's a weird paradox, isn't it? Because on the one hand, we've had total and utter unleashed carnage and chaos. I think we're at the only point in living memory where we're without a permanent Chief of Staff, a permanent Director of Communications, and a permanent Cabinet Secretary. But at the same time, we do have this sort of stability because no one can decide in the Labour Party who is the best person to replace Keir Starmer. And so he is in office at the moment by virtue of the fact there is no obvious successor. We don't have a sort of Gordon Brown colossus breathing down the neck of Tony Blair, who was just the obvious candidate to take over. Each of the front runners have their faults. Angela Rayner still hasn't sorted out her HMRC issue, where Streeting is pretty loathed by large members of the grassroots Labour Party. Shabana Mahmood is liked by members of the public, but obviously that makes her not very popular with members of her own party who don't like the immigration crackdown. Ed Miliband can't really do it again because I think even he knows that a second stint would just be, constitutionally pretty improper if he became Prime Minister, having been rejected by the British people.
Wow,
and so
good point.
And so there's no one really there at the moment who is the complete package, and therefore, and also none of them want to come into government, and the first thing they do is lose a pretty bloody May local elections, which would almost be the first act in government. And so, by virtue of the fact there's no one to replace Keir Starmer, he's safe for now.
Meanwhile, briefly, the Prime Minister is facing demands to actually cut funding to Labour Together, the think tank previously run by Morgan McSweeney, because of concerns that they were seeking to discredit UK journalists, including a few people working at the Times newspaper.
It's an absolutely shocking story. Gabriel Prockrand and Harry York, who really sort of blew the lid on dodgy donations at Labour Together a few years ago, we now realise that Labour Together, the think tank which is most aligned with the Starmer project, helped get him elected. Morgan McSweeney used to run it. It used to be run by a current Cabinet Office Minister, Josh Simons, as well. And when he was there, he commissioned these private investigators to essentially try and dig up dirt and then disseminate totally incorrect smears about these two journalists, questioning their faith, questioning their political motivations, really nasty, but also totally baseless stuff.
Yeah, fake news
totally.
links to Russia, for example.
Totally, just totally like
Oh, and by the way,
stuff.
some of it, I would argue, with an anti-Semitic flavour.
Well, it definitely seemed that way. And I think that, rightly, the Sunday Times have come out, defended their journalism. And I'm glad that yesterday they put this story on the front page. And I hope that Labour ministers now come out and distance themselves and probably will end up cutting ties with Labour Together.
Jack, I've got to tell you, one of the political scoops of the year. More power to you and your elite-level journalism at The Sun newspaper. That is the front page exclusive asylum farce, 500k phone compo for migrants. Incredible journalism. Jack will speak again soon, political editor of The Sun newspaper. Here's a voice note from Lisa on the travesty of compensation for illegal immigrants.
Morning, Mark. It's Lisa from Canterbury. I'm just watching your programme regarding this, the phone war thing with the small boats. I mean, I'm sorry to say it, but, you know, I may well be wrong, but I doubt it. I mean, all these lefty lawyers that are, you know, going above the law to try and get all this money for these bloody boat people. I mean, they must be judges that are Starmer's mates. They must be like the activist judges, because any normal judge would be throwing that out, because these boats are illegal the second they land on our shores. So I think we should be looking at the judges, not the lawyers. I think it's an absolute disgrace, and unfortunately, I think we're finished here. Thank you.
Lisa, I hear you, and I hear your desperation, and most people feel like we're going in the wrong direction. Some people feel like we're finished. Let me tell you, Lisa, that the tunnel is at its darkest before you get out of it. And the worse things get, the bigger the change will be. There is going to be an economic, societal, cultural and political revolution. Bring popcorn! It is 8:41. This is Talk Breakfast. You won't believe this story. Angela Rayner has got a shocking legacy in government because her workers' rights package has led to a third of employers deciding not to recruit any new staff members. Unemployment is through the roof. I'm going to get reaction from one of the country's best known and most respected entrepreneurs next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. It is 8:43, a very busy hour or so to come. Lots of messages coming in thick and fast. And this is our lead story of the day. Illegal immigrants receiving £6,500 worth of compensation paid for by you and I because their phones were taken off them when they landed in Dover. Barry says, good morning, Mark. I'd just like someone to ask a politician the question, if you take away the incentives of the migrants, perhaps they won't come. What part of that don't they understand? Ben in Northamptonshire, good morning, Mark. I just paid my 6.5k tax bill. So all the tax I've paid this year has gone straight into the pocket of an illegal immigrant. Make it make sense. Well, you're absolutely right. This show and this channel belongs to Alarm Clock Britain. Those that put in more than they take out. Those that believe that work is the right thing to do rather than taking from the state. And yet, your hard-earned taxes don't even touch the sides when it comes to the cost of illegal immigration. And don't forget the elephant in the room, which is legal migration, which is a massive cost to the exchequer as well. Yes, we hear about the fact that there's a skills gap that needs to be plugged. Well, what about the 9 million people of working age who are not active in the economy? They're not all at death's door, are they? But they're on benefits. They should pick the fruit. They should clean the streets. They should work in the care homes and in the NHS, because even legal immigration is a massive cost to the country. Now, no one's against immigration altogether, but the Boris wave is wild, because even if you've plugged a skills gap, it's a huge cost. The latest statistics suggest that someone that's come here legally to work in a low-skilled job will still cost the taxpayer £1 million if they live to the age of 90. Like the brilliant Ben said, make it make sense. This from Dennis. Good morning, Mark. Instead of taking their phones, simply borrow them, download the contents to a PC, then give the phone back. Forget about the £500,000 malarkey. The problem you've got, Dennis, that would make sense, but it's their privacy that is protected by the ECHR, which, by the way, we could not leave if we were still in the European Union. By the way, I took a call earlier from John in Bradford, who is very unhappy about the direction of the country, very unhappy about Bradford, how it's changed over the years. June says, good morning, Mark. Everything that your caller John in Bradford said echoes my life in Birmingham. I don't recognise my hometown, and I wish, oh wish, I had the money to leave. But where would I go? This is the point. There is such a sense, isn't there, of hopelessness. And we've got 3 more years of this. Potentially, under Sir Keir Starmer, his replacement could be even worse. We've now got another worrying headline, and it's about the economy, and it matters to you and me because it's about unemployment benefits. And the headline is, workers' rights reforms push 1/3 of employers to cut hiring. It turns out if you create red tape for employers and put their taxes up, they won't employ people. Who knew? Unfortunately, Rachel from Accounts did not get the memo. I'll be speaking to one of the country's most respected entrepreneurs in just a moment. But first up, on this mad phones immigrant story, Miranda is in Cumbria. Good morning, Miranda.
Good morning.
Miranda, can I just start by saying that you are a very lucky lady living in Cumbria, which is one of the most beautiful places on planet Earth.
It truly is.
Isn't it? Are you whereabouts are you in Cumbria?
Near Ulverston.
Oh, my goodness. Look at that. Isn't that the birthplace of Stan Laurel?
Yes, it is.
Who was a comic genius.
It is, and there's a wonderful statue of him stood there.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Outside the Cora.
And my goodness, how the country has changed since that little lad was born. What do you make of this? Illegal immigrants have their phones taken off them by the authorities, which is the right thing to do, because there's a lot of information on there that we need to know. They are now getting £6.5 compensation.
Well, it was the first thing I heard when I woke up this morning. I put your programme on, and it just made my heart sink, because for a start, how much are the human rights lawyers receiving out of that? If they're only 17 are receiving only a certain amount, which is absolutely vile. But the other thing, I was just thinking about the poor lady that was stabbed by one of the asylum seekers within one of the hotels, and how I don't think Mr. Starmer will actually speak to her mother and the girls that have been assaulted. I just was wondering whether there was any chance that they could be sued, that they could say, well, our human rights have been affected and the Refugee Convention basically isn't working because they're not looking after the citizens of our own country, and they've put them at risk.
Well, you're so right. You're talking about Rhiannon White, who was stabbed 23 times with a screwdriver in a frenzied 90-second attack. And this is a woman that worked at the taxpayer-funded Migrant hotel where this monster was accommodated.
Yes, so we're paying for it.
I know.
It's unbelievable. And it just makes me feel so sad. And it feels so sad for that lady, her mother, her family, her son, and Mr. Starmer. I don't think we'll even meet her mum, who all she wants to say is that this is what's happened. And it's happened under his watch and the Tories' watch. And
it has.
It's just very, very sad. That's all I wanted to say.
And Miranda,
really.
Briefly, if you can, by the way, you sound out of breath. What are you up to?
I'm walking the dog again. I found you watching.
Look at that. I tell you, aren't your dog is very, very lucky getting that daily exercise. You're getting your steps in as well. Your body's a temple, Miranda. Briefly, as you stroll the beautiful hills of Cumbria and the lakes and all the rest of it, do you have hope for the country? Can change happen, or are we done?
If the human rights lawyers, and we come out of the ECHR, and they lose their positions, and if at some stage they're held accountable for the disastrous situation, at the moment we're done, but Starmer has to go.
Miranda, thank you for a brilliant call. Best wishes to your dog as well. It's walkies every day for that very lucky hound. Miranda in Cumbria, fed up. Starmer's got to go. I do have hope, but there is going to have to be seismic change, and the whole establishment has got to be wiped out. Talk Breakfast, 8:50, more to come.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. It is 8:52. We're going to get more of the big stories of the day in just a moment, but I've got some rare good news for you. Marky, do your worst.
90 minutes in 90 seconds from The Sun.
I'm delighted to be joined by Simon Collins, the Arsenal reporter at The Sun. And Simon, some fantastic news thanks to and courtesy of Team GB.
Yeah, 2 gold medals yesterday at the Winter Olympics. It's been a bit of a slow burner, hasn't it? We've kind of been waiting for it to ignite. And 2 gold medals yesterday. I mean, Super Sunday is what a lot of people have been calling it. Brings back memories a bit of London 2012, doesn't it? And that fantastic Saturday. And, I mean, the hero of it is Matt Weston in the skeleton doubles. A brilliant performance. And that's his 2nd gold of the Games. And he's the first British man to win 2 medals at a single Winter Olympics. So incredible stuff from him.
Simon, it's great news. Why are Britain doing so well in both the regular Olympics and the Winter Olympics these days, do you think?
I mean, if you speak to someone like Matt Weston, a big thing he spoke about when he won that first gold was the lottery funding and the support he's been getting. You know, these things don't come without investment. And I think, you know, if you look back sort of 20, 25 years ago, these medals weren't really happening, and they are now. And I think it's the dedication, the money that's going towards it. And then the athletes, I mean, incredible sacrifices they've made to get to this point.
Well, I think it's great news and more power to them. And let's hope the medals continue to roll in, Simon. What about a medal for Macclesfield versus Brentford? That's in the FA Cup 4th round this evening. That would be some scalp, wouldn't it, if they were to be successful?
Yeah, I mean, they've been a brilliant story in the FA Cup. Macclesfield, everyone remembers that game against Crystal Palace in the 3rd round. Another Premier League team going up there. They're a great story. We haven't had a fantastic weekend in the Cup. We haven't had any magic, really. But if Macclesfield win tonight, I think that'd be brilliant. Particularly, obviously, we know John Rooney in charge, Wayne Rooney's brother. They're just a great story, really, this season. And I think everyone would love to see them go into the next round.
Most definitely. Although Brentford, of course, no slouches in the football department. It's interesting, isn't it? Because when they lost their gaffer, Thomas Frank, to Tottenham, everyone thought they might go down. Well, they've prevailed. Meanwhile, it's Tottenham that are flirting with relegation.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it? I think if you'd have said that we'd be in this position where, I mean, the Brentford manager, Keith Andrews, is literally having to field questions about, are they going to be in Europe next season? And Thomas Frank is out of the job. I think it just shows how well run a club Brentford are, really. But they can lose their manager, they lose Brian Mbuemo, you know, star striker, they lose their captain Christian Norgard, and they're still in this amazing position.
Simon, your team, Arsenal. You're the Arsenal reporter at The Sun. Are you actually an Arsenal fan?
I am an Arsenal fan.
Good.
I am, yeah.
So we can express your interest there very publicly. Are you feeling the heat? 4 points now between you and Man City. Is the pressure on? Is it squeaky bum time?
I mean, this is a big week, I think. Obviously, the North London derby on Sunday. This game on Wolves on Wednesday night, which is Arsenal essentially. They're the only team playing in the Premier League this midweek, so they're going to have that gap. And if they use it, 7 points clear. If they don't, City are suddenly going to think, right, we're 4 points behind with a game in hand. So this, for me, feels like a massive week. And rounding it off with a trip to Spurs, I don't think it gets much better than that.
It probably doesn't. Bring popcorn, box office stuff. Lovely to see you, Simon. We'll speak soon. Simon Collins is the Arsenal reporter at The Sun newspaper, bringing us fantastic news about Team GB in the Winter Olympics. Well done them, bringing some pride and much-needed smiles on our faces. Let's get a call now. Alan is in Salford. Alan, top of the morning. Welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Good morning, Mark.
Oh, where to start? Listen, we've got so many stories that I want to get your views on. What do you make of the fact that illegal immigrants are receiving compensation of £6,500 because the authorities seized their phones on arrival?
They shouldn't be, actually, they shouldn't be in the country, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And if they come into the country, they should be locked in these hotels or wherever they are, and locked in and see how they go on then.
Well, I cannot understand how, if you've broken into the country illegally, you don't just have pocket money and get given a mobile phone 3 meals a day, Alan, dentist appointment, but you have freedom to walk the streets. I mean, I cannot understand how that's happening.
That's the worst part about it, Mark. That is the worst part about this nonsense. They're free to roam. We don't even know who they are. But can I get to my point?
Please do. My God, yes.
I'm sorry.
No, you do it. Listen, whatever you think is what we put on the radio, on the telly, Alan, so take it away.
I've got 2 small points about the monarchy in our government now, this constitution. It wants throwing... We need to get rid of the monarchy because Charles won't do anything to help this country now at the moment, I'm afraid.
Interesting.
It's been... from years ago, no king and queen from the 1600s to the 1900s would have let this happen to the country. What's happening now to us by a government?
So you feel that the direction of the country, like a ruined economy, open borders, crazy woke stuff, you hold the king partly responsible for the decline of the country?
No, I think we shouldn't have this constitution. We should have a constitution for the people of this country, for the British people of this country.
Right.
Our own constitution. Forget having someone else in and the Lords and the rest. These Lords need getting rid of, the House of Lords, because now, when it was the hereditary peers, it seemed they did interfere and do good things. But I don't like to say hereditary peers did a lot more than these bought peers that political parties put in.
It's interesting what you're saying. I think you see the monarchy as just part of an establishment that works against the people, and it's all got to go.
Well, it does nothing in our constitution. What's it for? If the king could jump in, I don't actually. This king, I'm afraid, I'm not very pleased with this fella. The old queen, if she could have jumped in and done something, I think she would.
Yeah, I mean, where do you stand on that? The problem you've got is that the minute the monarch gets political, well, then suddenly half the country love them, half the country hate them. I mean, isn't the point, Alan, that they wouldn't jump in, that they don't have political power?
Well, what's the point of having him in Parliament then, when he has to give the speech, when governments change?
Yeah, and Alan, what do you think? You think that if Reform get in, they should get rid of the royal family and basically wipe out the establishment. Do you think Reform can save the country? Do you have faith in Farage, Alan?
I have faith in all of them, not just Farage. I think Farage is going to step back eventually and let this party go on. But on my second point, Freedom of Information Act.
Oh, yeah.
You journalists know about this. I've often wanted to try and have a go, but it's too technical for me. I think it should be scrapped, and we should get information from the government. They've got it.
Alan, you are so right. I wish we had longer. Alan wants change. What say you? More to come. This is Talk Breakfast.
Labour MPs. They say, listen, Keir, your position is untenable. This is all about appointing that rat, Peter Mandelson.
We've now had another resignation from number 10. The plot is thickening, the noose is tightening.
His failings are internal. He's useless, incompetent, has no political judgment.
This is all part of Starmer's reset, getting rid of his inner circle. So Chris Wormold, we think fairly reluctantly, has stepped down.
What an absolutely crazy week for Keir Starmer. His second cabinet secretary, gone. His third chief of staff, gone. His fourth director of communications, gone.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning to you. 3 minutes past 9. Happy Monday, one and all. Mark Dolan in for Jeremy Kyle all of this week. Thank you so much for your company, for your voice notes, your calls, your texts. A lot more of your feedback to come. A packed hour. Breaking this morning, £500,000 worth of compensation has been paid out to illegal immigrants who successfully sued the UK government for taking their phones when they arrived in Dover. All because of, you guessed it, human rights laws and the ECHR. The Labour Party can't get behind any individual candidate. Are we stuck with Starmer for the next 3 years? What are the implications for the country? Also, 007 has got to be a white man, says a former Bond girl. We'll have that conversation. And no one is above the law, including Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, says the UK's top prosecutor. I'll get reaction from the former press secretary to Queen Elizabeth II. So much to get through. A very, very busy hour, including the doyen of political journalism, Trevor Kavanagh, who will have strong views on illegal immigrants receiving a payout of £6,500 worth of compensation, paid for, you guessed it, by you and I. But first up, a really worrying development for the economy, because the government's workers' rights reforms have pushed a third of employers to cut hiring. So is Britain on the brink of an unemployment surge? Let's get the views of one of the country's best known and most successful entrepreneurs, Charlie Mullins, founder of Pimlico Plumbers. Good morning, Charlie.
Good morning, Mark. Morning.
Great to have you on the show. Does that headline surprise you, that with all of this red tape and increased workers' rights, that employers are not hiring?
It doesn't surprise me in the slightest. I mean, this was always coming, and it's probably been coming for many years. The problem we have, Mark, and honestly, it's a real simple solution to resolve. We need to, instead of keep putting people on graduate degrees and things that nobody needs.
Mickey Mouse degrees.
Yeah, art and history, which, I mean, the only one who's got a job out of that is the king. So they need to put them on sort of apprenticeship degrees. And you'll find that an apprenticeship degree costs about £12,000 the most, right? Where the university degree is 50 to 70,000.
Yeah.
The taxpayer is funding half of that. So if you think about it, if they give them the same type of money, you can have, I think, 6 graduates learning an apprenticeship, and very quickly will the skill shortage be resolved. I think we're 70-odd thousand plumbers short now. We're going to be another 50-odd thousand short in 2030. And then you've got, I think, 500,000 houses to build. If you put 10 builders on an house, that's another, I think, 5 million people that are in employment. So it's nothing clever to sort it. I mean, if I was involved with government, not with Labour, because obviously they're not business-minded, but I believe if reform got in and I was involved in it, I think you could get the skills shortage resolved within a few years, and you wouldn't have no such thing as youth unemployment. Yes, certainly they need support. It's not a case that they don't want to work. I mean, we got youngsters queuing up at WeFix to try and get an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
But because of the overheads, we just can't afford to do it. The other thing they need to do is cut national insurance for all youngsters under 21. Get youngsters into work. Encourage businesses.
Well, that's right, because the national insurance tax raid has affected, for example, Charlie, hospitality. What do we know about hospitality? It's a big employer of young people. The red tape facing businesses means they've got to cut costs, they've got to stop hiring. Who do they stop hiring? Entry-level employees, that is young people. We've got the increase in the minimum wage. Companies have to accommodate that cost. How are they going to do it? Not employ young people. And it's devastating if 18 and 19-year-olds can't work and get used to being sat at home doing nothing.
That's exactly it. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm not blaming the youngsters at all because, you know, as I said to you, we have them queuing up where we are to get into the workplace. Yeah. But what I find strange, in Dubai, they're investing lots of money in hospitality, tourism, marketing, IT. They're actually investing their money into it for jobs that are going to be there irrespective of AI, where we don't seem to be investing any money whatsoever into youngsters' future. And, you know, honestly, you haven't got to be that bright to work out. Like, they're putting them on degrees that are, there ain't a job at the end of it. There won't be a job at the end of it. And there's just not a market for it. I mean, we need to build 500,000 houses. Surely someone in Downing Street's got a brain to know that you've got to start training apprentices, and instead of, you know, lending them money to be a graduate, lend them money to be apprentice. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
It is. Of course, the government will argue that they have actually created a lot more apprenticeships, but it doesn't touch the sides. It's a tip of the iceberg, isn't it, Charlie? And can you tell us, as a very successful entrepreneur and employer, someone that's given job opportunities to thousands of people, why is it such a problem for businesses with this latest workers' rights package?
Well, I think lots of employers are concerned that, you know, if you do got sort of workers' rights from day one, you've got a contract, you know, all of a sudden, you know, so unfortunately, some people you employ, you know, they're just looking for a cheap payout. So I think it makes you quite scared who you employ. I mean, it wouldn't bother me. I'd tell them to F off anyhow, whoever. But
you don't pull your punches.
Well, what I'm trying to say, if you ain't right, you ain't right, you know, and I don't worry how many inquiries I would follow. If they're not right for the job, they're not right. But a lot of employees are very scared of that factor because, you know, you're 1-0 down, the tribunals are against you. You got, you know, some people like start telling silly lies about it. An employee or employer does not want to get rid of people. They want to actually train them up and keep them in with the business. But I'm telling you now, it can be resolved very quickly. Just stop lending money for university degrees and start lending it for apprenticeship. It costs £12,000 instead of £50,000.
What do you make of Rachel Reeves's management of the economy, Charlie?
Well, I think you can work that one out yourself. I think, you know, we're going down and down and down. She's done nothing since she's been Chancellor at all. She's done nothing that's been an advantage, and everything has the vice versa effect.
Wait a minute, Charlie, I hate to correct you, but she's the most pro-growth Chancellor in history, apparently.
Says who? Labour.
She's also, Charlie, the first woman Chancellor, and that's very important as well. Her reproductive organs is important.
Well, it won't matter to me whether it's a male or female or one of these oddballs. What does it matter? I mean, you know, it doesn't matter what sex you are. Is she coming up with the goods? No. We've got more people at work now than ever.
She's pulled out the urinals from number 11 Downing Street, and she's got rid of all the portraits of successful previous chancellors that were men. I mean, isn't that good for my viewers and listeners?
Well, the only thing it's only good for is a good reason to sack her, you know, for destroying the UK.
Now, I know that you're hopeful, Charlie, of a Reform UK government in 3 years' time. What do you think is the prospect for the country before then? We've got 3 years potentially of Starmer in charge, maybe Reeves in number 11. Where are we going to be in 3 years, do you think?
Well, we've been in a worse mess than what we are now, that's for sure. I mean, where we will be, I don't know, but we will be in a bad mess. And unless, of course, there's an early general election called and we need someone new in there. But where we're going to be in three years from now, well, we'll definitely be in the shit, that's for sure.
Apologies to anyone concerned about Charlie's language, but Charlie is a passionate man who shoots from the hip, doesn't take any nonsense. Charlie, you're not just a founder of Pimlico Plumbers, you've gone again now with a very successful business, which is WeFix. Do you think that when there is an election, a future government can fix the country? Is there hope for my viewers and listeners, Charlie?
Undoubtedly there's hope, undoubtedly on that, because so many people want to get in the workplace, want the country to be great again. Honestly, there's youngsters are queuing up for jobs. You know, they're not as if they don't want to work. So, of course there's hope. We've just got to get a different management. You know, if and when Reform get in, I think they're going to get business people on their side, and business people understand business. That's what they do. I mean, unfortunately, Labour politicians are very anti-business.
Have you offered your services to Nigel Farage in the event of a future Reform UK administration, Charlie?
Well, I think he's fully aware that I'll be very interested, put it like that.
Yeah, most definitely. A quick one. What do you make of this story, front page of The Sun, Charlie, while I've got you? An exclusive asylum farce. £500,000 phone compo for migrants. Illegal immigrants suing the UK government for compensation because the authorities took their phones off them when they arrived here illegally. Your reaction?
Well, I mean, it's absolutely crazy. Can we really be that stupid and pay these people and tolerate these people? I mean, maybe the giveaway word is illegal. You know, why would you give anybody that's illegal anything? They're not entitled to anything. We don't want them here. They don't work here. They need to be sent back. We don't want to pay for them. So to come up with giving them compensation about a telephone is absolutely making the UK look the stupidest country in the world.
And Charlie, you've left, I mean, you are a massive patriot and you've given so much to this country, and you started with nothing as a school leaver yourself. You had an amazing career, but you've fled the country. You've had enough. What would it take to get you back?
Nigel Farage being Prime Minister, Reform getting in, or even just Labour going. I mean, if they went, I probably, even if I got Conservatives were back in, I would come back. But Labour are very anti-business, but probably being honest, I think the only people that can turn it around would be Reform, if I'm being perfectly honest. So as soon as Nigel Farage gets in there, or Reform get in there, then I'll be very happy to invest my money back in the UK. I mean, I've already got apprentices on with WeFix, as you know.
Yeah.
And we're still heavily invested in there because, you know, that's what you need to do. We need to create jobs. We need to create money for people to, you know, be involved in everything and give youngsters a future. I mean, I'll be back as quick as anything and set up a trade school for youngsters once we get a change of government.
Most definitely. Well, look, Charlie, thank you for your time. Always a privilege to have you on the show. A true British success story. Charlie Mullins there, founder of both Pimlico Plumbers and now We Fix. Here's a voice note on illegal immigrants receiving compensation for having their phones taken off them. Belinda.
Morning, Mark. Great show. I am absolutely, I'm incensed with what I've just heard this morning about this £6.5 compensation. That is outrageous. I don't even have that in savings. It's taken me years to save just under that amount. This is, I'm so angry. This has got to stop. Why isn't he doing his job? I'm livid.
Belinda, I can't follow your voice note. Your anger is understandable. There are people listening to this show, watching it, who feel like second-class citizens in their own country. You save up your hard-earned cash, and yet that sort of money wouldn't even touch the sides when it comes to the cost of illegal immigration. How hard can it be? What are the borders for if they're not policed? What is a country if it's not an established territorial boundary that has a say over who comes in and who doesn't? If you don't have that jurisdiction, that control, you're not a country at all. Let's get reaction from one of the most experienced political journalists in the country, the former political editor of the Sun newspaper, Trevor Kavanagh. Trevor, I don't know if you heard the emotion in Belinda's voice there, but the public are very angry.
Absolutely. I had to turn my radio down. I think that she speaks for a huge proportion of British people. And I think those people are beginning to wonder whether the government itself and the Home Office in particular are on the side of the people in the country or the people who want to get in illegally. These are huge sums of money that we simply do not have, which we're giving out to people who have arrived illegally using gangs who are being paid huge sums of money. And what's on their phones and their phone records is very valuable to officials and indeed to the police in tracking down and finding the people who are behind these gangs. So it's a perfectly legitimate move by the authorities, and it's absurd and appalling that we are now returning them, and with compensation, in such huge sums to the people who have come here illegally.
Most definitely. Mike has messaged the show, Trevor, to say if these illegal immigrants receive £6.5 compensation for effectively having their phones looked at, which is ludicrous, simply charge them £6.5 for their board and lodgings prior to deportation. Does the Prime Minister, Trevor, not have an instinct for self-preservation? Do you not think that when he sees these headlines and identifies public anger, that he might move on the ECHR?
He's trapped on this one because he has a huge constituency within his own party in the House of Commons and at large, who are actually pro-immigration, no matter who the people are who are coming. Everyone is welcome as far as they're concerned, and it's lovely to see them on our streets. So, yes, the position is that he cannot risk a war with his largely migrant-related constituencies across the country. And the fact that the British people don't want it, and very much don't want it, and haven't for the last 25 years, is second consideration to him.
Well, it's going to be very politically expensive at the next election, isn't it? At the heart of this is the ECHR, also the Human Rights Act, potentially the Refugee Convention. It's the entire legal and constitutional framework of this country which is the problem, Trevor.
It is, and you keep coming back to the same problem, which is that we've got 2 or 3 more years of this government in office, and while they're there, absolutely nothing will be done about this legislation, which is imposed on us by a foreign body. Basically, we may be signed up to it, but we left the European Union in order to set out our own sovereign status, and that should include control of our borders.
Most definitely. And Ian Duncan Smith, previously on the show, Trevor, was clear that our ability to access the ECHR is thanks to our exit from the EU. Thanks to Brexit, we can leave.
Of course we can. We can do anything we like, really. Yeah. This flood of migrants across the Channel over the last several years since Brexit in 2016, 2018, or 2020, I mean, the vote was in 2016, it could have been stopped at any point. We had the right, the power, and the authority to take control of our borders from the moment we finally exited the European Union. And far from that, it's actually increased over that period of time. I mean, we've got a huge influx of legal migration, but this is absolutely unacceptable, unforgivable, and it is stoppable.
Indeed, and fair play to The Sun for carrying that exclusive. They've also run a story, Trevor, in which it's been revealed that large numbers of illegal immigrants are pretending to be under 18, which gives them further legal protection. And The Sun is trying to get to the bottom of how many of those people have pretended to be that age and what have been the consequences. Can I ask you about a possible deal between the Tories and Reform prior to or after the election? Do you think that's got any legs, that story?
Well, I think that both sides have set their faces firmly against any deal. But in my opinion, and I suspect quite a few of your listeners, this would be a betrayal of the country, because it's unlikely that either of them will secure a majority on their own at the next general election. There will need to be a merging of the two interests, even if it's only supply and support. In other words, you don't oppose the legislation that potentially a minority reform government came in. But also, you don't stand in seats where reform is a front runner. For instance, I think, and I've written that Kemi Badenoch would do herself no harm at all if she simply withdrew her candidate from the Gordon and Denton by-election coming up next week. I think that would be a gesture with basically no cost to the Tory party, because they have no chance of winning with 8 or 9% of the vote so far.
Yeah.
It might be a good place to show their new branding is working under Kemi Badenoch, but it would also be a no-cost benefit to the Tories to show that they are at least prepared at some point in the future to do a deal in the interest of the country.
Trevor, why don't you share Nigel Farage's confidence that he can win an overall majority and smash the Tories?
Well, I think the big problem is not the Labour Party who are coming back with a surge. It's the Greens who are mopping up a lot of votes without explaining any of their really horrendous policies, as Rod Liddle explains in The Sun this morning. I think that plus the Liberal Democrats, plus the handful of Labour seats that are still in Labour hands, could form a majority, a really horrible coalition, which could keep the right of centre out of power.
Trevor, brilliant to see you. We'll catch up soon. Trevor Kavanagh is the former political editor of The Sun newspaper, suggesting that Reform UK may not be able to win an overall majority and that some kind of agreement with the Conservatives pre or post-election may be necessary. What do you think? Can Reform win a landslide on their own? 0344 499 1000. Talk Breakfast, 9:23. More to come.
You said that he's going to cover Manchester. Hang on,
most
let
of
me
Manchester.
finish.
He's covering most
No, he's going to build solar farms big enough to cover Manchester.
That's what I said.
It's not going to cover Manchester.
Why does it say it in the Telegraph?
Oh, my God.
It says it in black and white.
Samara, do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying. I do understand what Ash is saying too, though.
Because
do you think he's going to cover Manchester?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, it is 9:29. Thank you for your company. Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan in for Jeremy Carl. So many messages coming in about illegal immigrants receiving compensation because we took their phones off them when they landed in the country illegally. Make it make sense. Kevin in Barnstable says, if I was Keir Starmer hearing this news this morning, I'd march to Parliament and do whatever it takes to address the absurdity of the application of the ECHR laws. I wouldn't leave the place until the problem had been fixed. I would use all my powers to bring the half-wits who pursued these treasonous causes, and I would do it all under the threat of calling an immediate general election. Starmer would go 0 to hero in the space of 4 hours. Trouble is, I'm not Keir Starmer, and more is the pity. Kevin in Barnstable, thank you for a brilliant text. Les says, mobile phones. The police take phones from people who may have committed a crime to search for information which may convict them. What is the difference with illegal immigrants? Paul in Fife, good morning, Mark. I'm a retired detective. If you commit a crime and are detained and arrested in this country, any article that has been used to facilitate the crime can be seized by the police. In the case of phones, there's a clear case that these people used their phones to communicate with traffickers and most probably their associates in the UK. There is no case to provide compensation. What the hell is going on, Mark? Does this now mean that no phones will be seized in the future? Are we going to give every migrant whose phone was seized £6,000? We're talking upwards of 100,000 phones. Paul, you're right. The bill for this is potentially unlimited. Gary in Rutland, good morning, Mark. Just thinking it's £6,500 compensation, but how much did the lawyers cost on top of that we also paid for via legal aid? There you go. It goes on, doesn't it? It's madness. 9:27. A former Bond girl has said that 007 must be played by a white man. Mariam Dabo, who is 65, who played Cara Milovi in The Living Daylights, has given her verdict on who Daniel Craig's successor should be. Asked if she thought a black actor could be cast, she said, well, you can do, but don't call it Bond, call it something else. You can have a wonderful black hero, but that is not James Bond. She added that Ian Fleming's books should be more accurately represented on screen. Rafe Hadelmanku is a broadcaster, historian, fellow at the New Culture Forum and Bond fan. Rafe, what do you make of this? What's the problem with a diverse Bond?
Everything. If you want to have diverse spies, create your own new characters. We don't need to have a Jane Bond, for example. You do need to be authentic and honour the source material. I'm less wedded to the issue of race than I am, firstly, to the fact that he must be British, must be a man, and must be also of the right class. That was actually one of the reasons I didn't want Idris Elba to do it, because Idris Elba simply doesn't speak like somebody who went to Eton or to Fettes, which is the Scottish version of Eton, as James Bond did. You know, America has those two great icons for great heroes, Superman and Captain America. In Britain, our two great heroes are Sherlock Holmes and James Bond. And you don't want to tamper with a tried and true formula. We know from Ian Fleming's books what James Bond was, who he was, what he looked like. He was white, he was Scottish-Swiss, undeniably British, with, blue-grey eyes, looking a bit like Hoagie Carmichael, he's described as. No, only your older members are going to remember Hoagie Carmichael, but there's a distinct look to James Bond, and he's very much a product of his background and of his upbringing. The upper middle class, wartime naval intelligence, and that really is the Bond that we've all come to expect. And over 60 years of filmmaking, all of those actors have portrayed someone along those lines. So it would be a complete It would be complete nonsense to try to do away with that now, and it would just serve to alienate fans. We've seen what happened with Doctor Who. When they went woke, we don't want to see the same thing with James Bond.
No, and I wonder whether the 007 franchise is not in safe hands with Amazon, who now own the intellectual property and the back catalogue, Rafe, because we know how incredibly woke and box-ticking these large corporations are.
Yeah, absolutely. So, until recently, until last year, Barbara Broccoli, the daughter of Bond producer Cubby Broccoli, had creative ownership, but she's now sold it off to MGM, which is owned by Amazon, as you say. Now, I think she was always a very good traditionalist, and she said he must be British and white and male. She was left wedded to the idea of race. But I think she did something very clever in the last film, because in the last film, for a short while, James Bond is stripped of the 007 license to kill number, and that number is temporarily given to a black woman. And then eventually at the end, Bond gets back the 007. But I think she did that on purpose as a swan song to say, look, we've had a black woman as 007 now. We've done that. We don't need to revisit it.
Move on.
I wrote a book called A London Peculiar a few years ago, and in it I had a chapter called In the Footsteps of James Bond, where I basically describe all the places he would shop, where he would eat, his private members clubs, his hairdresser and so forth. That's the Bond we all want, somebody who's very much born and raised in St James's in Mayfair, who understands the British establishment and the British class system and is embedded in that.
I love the sound of A London Peculiar. I'll be on Amazon buying it shortly. Rafe, what do you make of this front page story in The Sun? And it's an exclusive asylum farce. 500k phone compo for migrants, people that have entered the country illegally, have had their phones quite rightly confiscated because you could find evidence of terror links, access to the black economy. You also might answer how they got here and why. And yet they're now suing for compensation, $6.5 grand each. The bill ultimately could run to millions. Your reaction?
Well, it's complete and utter madness, isn't it? Once again, we're having our rights and our freedoms used against us. This is all part of the legacy of having things like the Human Rights Act. And, this is all ties back to Tony Blair and New Labour, of course. And it just boggles the mind that we have had 15 years of Tory government and no one thought about doing away with the Human Rights Act. We need to stop being beholden to European courts about things like this. Common sense must prevail. You mustn't, obviously, have any enticement for people to come over here, and if they know they can come here, get benefits, and actually take the government to court. Imagine going to someone's place to stay and then taking them to court and demanding money for them. This is absolute nonsense, and we need to call it out for what it is.
It's little wonder that the public is so angry. I've got viewers and listeners who work very hard. They pay their taxes, Rafe, but the taxes they pay don't even touch the side when it comes to the cost of illegal immigration. I mean, it's a nightmare on several levels, isn't it? It's a national security problem, given that the authorities are clear that some of these people may have terror links. We know about the safety of women and children in the company of some of these characters. And then we've got the other issue, which is the enormous financial cost. Not just these legal payouts, not just the cost of accommodating these folk, but let's not forget that a good portion, maybe nearly as many as half, will stay.
Yeah, absolutely. And what is outrageous, of course, is that this country has a higher approval rate for asylum applications than any major country in Europe. We approve 62% of asylum applications. It's only around 40% in France and Germany. In Spain, it's only 12%. And of course, those that we reject, those people who are rejected in France and Germany and Spain, they come over here because they know that if they were rejected in France and Germany, they still have a chance to get here. So we're accepting into this country people who were rejected by the European Union. This is absolutely scandalous, and not enough attention is given to all of that. We're importing people who are coming from culturally incompatible lands. We have no idea who these people are. And many of them, we know, if you look at all the terror attacks we've had in this country in the last 25 years, the vast majority have been linked with asylum seekers or the children of asylum seekers. It's absolute madness. I've written out my policies. We have a new book in the New Culture Forum called Immigration, the Betrayal of Britain, and I lay out exactly what needs to be done to tackle illegal immigration. They shouldn't be setting foot on British soil at all. They should all, if you can't put the dinghies back to France, house them in old cruise ships moored in the Channel. When those cruise ships are filled up, you sell them off to the South Georgia Islands where they're processed. The idea is they should know they will never, ever set foot on Blighty. They'll be processed on a windswept island in the Atlantic, and it won't take long for the message to go, stay in France, stay in Germany, anywhere is better than Britain. We need a real hostile environment created in this country, and you don't do that by giving people compensation for mobile phones.
Rafe, you want change, I want change, my viewers and listeners want change. Is Reform UK the right political movement to deliver it?
Yes, absolutely. On the basis of mathematics alone, like the Reform Party, we are at the moment now where once in 100 years the tectonic plates of politics shift. 100 years ago, the Labour Party took over from the Liberal Party. It's so difficult to shatter this two-party system, Tory and Labour. This is the only chance we have now, and Reform is the only vehicle to do that.
But is it snake oil? Is Nigel Farage a charming con man? The robust Conservative Rupert Lowe that started a new party with the support of Elon Musk says Nigel will let people down.
Look, everybody knows my views on immigration and everything else are as conservative and right-wing as you could imagine.
Robust.
But the reality is 60% of this nation vote for centre-left parties. Only 40% of the country vote for centre-right parties or right-wing parties. The only reason we've had conservative governments for the past few decades is because the left-wing vote has been split between Labour, Green, Plaid, SNP and the Lib Dems. If we start splitting the vote on the right, we will never have a right-wing government again. This is purely about mathematics and arithmetics. If you really want to get control, and remember, 2% of Conservative voters die every year. We've already lost around 20% of voters since Brexit. By 2029, 1.2 million right-wing voters will have died. Only around 500,000 Labour voters will have died. This is a demographic time bomb. This next election is the most crucial election we're going to fight. If we want to reverse mass immigration, if we want to send the Boris wave back before they get leave to remain and so forth. So we must ensure we have a right-wing government, and I'm the only vehicle for that. I've got all sympathy for other parties, but we need to unite the right for the betterment of this country, because there's no point having great policies if you'll never be empowered to enact them. If people are concerned about reform, then make sure you can move that Overton window by the time of the next election and influence them. But we have to all come together under reform, I believe, if you want to have any chance of tackling the great mess we're in.
Rafe, thanks for joining us. We'll speak soon. Rafe Hadelman-Koo is a broadcaster, historian and fellow at the New Culture Forum. Here's a voice note from Daniel.
Good morning, Mark. It's Daniel from Epsom here. I've written to Prince William and I've said to him, William, unless you get involved over the immigration crisis that we're suffering in Britain at the moment, your son George will end up reigning over a third world toilet where all the actual native British people have left. What will you be reigning over? Nothing. Like Mad Max territory. Like be completely third world from floor to ceiling. They need to get involved and speak for the British majority now, before it's too late.
Interesting. Should the monarchy step in and save the country that they represent? Daniel, thank you for that. Third world toilet. Is that where we are? 9:37. This is Talk Breakfast.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:37, Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan with you all of this week in for Jeremy Kyle. The fabulous Julia Hartley-Brewer is live at 10, and let me tell you, she's coming in hot. Plenty to talk about, including this Sun newspaper exclusive. Illegal immigrants receiving compensation because cops took their mobile phones when they landed on our shores. Pete says human rights lawyers should only be permitted to act on behalf of people born in this country. Legal aid should not be available to foreigners. This from Tony. Good morning, Mark. Great show. How many times do I have to message Talk on the subject of what's wrong with this country? It is the lawyers. They will have instigated the illegals getting phone compensation. £6,500 for a mobile. I can get a good used phone for less than 300 quid. How much of that 6.5k is going to the lawyers and their fees? Sack the lawyers and make Britain great again, says Tony in Norfolk. Steve in Beckenham says, Mark, I find this phone compensation thing beyond ridiculous, but if they must pay out, why so much? You can buy the latest iPhone for 200 quid. Well, I think, Steve, the compensation is not the physical hardware of the phone. It's their human rights. It's their privacy. It's their feelings. Well, I don't care about your feelings or your human rights or your privacy if you've broken the law, especially if you've entered the country illegally. At that point, I think you've got no human rights. I think they disappear into thin air, but I guess it's an unfashionable view. 9:41, Talk Breakfast. So, Britain's chief prosecutor has said no one is above the law, including Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Let's get reaction now from a legend of royal broadcasting and journalism, Dickie Arbiter, former press secretary to Queen Elizabeth II. Dickie, good morning. Welcome to Talk.
Morning, Mark.
Very good to see you. A fresh headache for the King and Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. It's not impossible that the King's younger brother could be imprisoned.
It's not impossible, but the police need to first investigate, and they seem to be dragging their heels. They are assessing. What are they assessing? Are they assessing Andrew's involvement in Epstein and Maxwell's trafficking? Or are they assessing Andrew's handing over of not necessarily secret documents, but confidential documents? Or are they assessing both? They've got to get on with it, because I think people are getting heartily sick and tired of the authorities dragging their heels.
Given the weight of evidence now at the door of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, Dickie, are his protestations of innocence becoming less and less credible by the day?
Oh, I think they became less and less credible after that 2019 Newsnight interview. The proof was there in the photograph, which he denied ever having been taken. But Maxwell has crawled out of a jail cell and said in an email that it is genuine. I think Andrew has got to step forward and say exactly what happened. He can't continue hiding behind the veil of monarchy, because he's no longer part of that institution. He's plain Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, and he needs to get on with it and let other people get on with their jobs instead of this dragging out on and on and on, and also bringing the monarchy into a state of disrepute.
Who should Andrew Mountbatten Windsor be fessing up to, or at least sharing what information he has, Dickie? Would it be US Congress or the UK authorities, or both?
I think it's a question of both. The Americans have wanted to interview him and talk to him since that ghastly 2019 interview. And here we are 7 years on, and still nothing from him. He also needs to talk to British authorities. So it's a question of talking them to both of them. I see in Pam Bondi on your screens at the moment, and papers that have been released. There's a whole list in one of the newspapers of over 300 names of people allegedly associated with Jeffrey Epstein. And you've got to question that list, because you've got people like Janis Joplin, where Epstein was 17 when she died. Elvis Presley, he was 22 when he died. What are these people doing on the list? And you've got to ask yourself, what are a lot of people doing on that list? So Andrew's got to step forward. He's got to talk to the British authorities, because they'll want to question him if the police are serious about their investigation. And he also needs to talk to the American authorities.
Well, of course, as you know, Dickie, if you're on that list, it doesn't necessarily implicate you in any crimes, but it's still worthy of investigation. We need to get to the truth, don't we? Is the risk of
an Andrew Mountbatten Windsor appearance at US Congress that it would be like the Newsnight interview times 100?
That's the problem with Andrew. He's not the most intelligent bunny on the planet, and he's not very good at talking on his feet. And we saw that in the Newsnight interview. He took his time in answering questions, and when he answered them, he fudged every answer. So he's not the best of people to put up before inquisitors. And the Americans are dab hands at tearing people to shreds. And I think that's one of the reasons why, when he initially said a few years ago he's quite prepared to stand up in court, his lawyers probably stopped him and said, no, you can't do it because you're not capable of doing it. So it's a bit of chicken and egg here. That will he stand up and be judged? That is for him to decide. Will the Americans want him? Yes, of course they will. Will the British authorities want him? Yes, they will. Will they tear him to shreds? Probably.
We've had statements from the King and from the Prince and Princess of Wales. Dickie, is it time for King Charles to address the nation on this one?
That's a very difficult one. We've seen in the past, on very rare occasions, the late Queen addressing the nation, particularly when Diana, Princess of Wales, died. She paid tremendous tribute on the eve of the funeral. We saw the late Queen again in April 21 at the time, no, April 20, at the time of COVID, where she quoted that from Vera Lynn's song, we'll see our friends again, we'll see our family again, we'll meet again. It's a very difficult one, given that there is a police investigation. He has said that he and Buckingham Palace and the royal family will cooperate with any police investigation, and that they will, and they will open up anything that the police want to see. But to actually address the nation, you've got to ask yourself, what does he say short of actually meddling with the police investigation? It's a very difficult call. And I think at the moment, he said that all he needs to say, and people have got to accept that until such time that there is something to say, and until such time the police start their investigation and have even completed it.
You are a former press secretary to Queen Elizabeth II. What would she be making of this drama, this scandal, this crisis, if she were with us today, Dickie?
She would be absolutely horrified. She probably got an inkling of it immediately after that Newsnight interview, when the headlines were full of Andrew and the Epstein Association and sex trafficking. By that time, she was in her 90s, and she was coming to the end of her life. And it was very unfortunate that she was faced with that from one of her own children. People say that Andrew was her favourite. They were all favourites in different ways, but Andrew managed to get around her. He was never honest with her. He was never honest with anybody, as we saw again, sorry to repeat myself, in that Newsnight interview. So she would have, it would have been, dare I say, the final nail in the coffin in terms of relationship with her son.
You've said that Andrew was not the brightest tool in the box, Dickie. Having witnessed Andrew as Prince Andrew, formerly, given that you were press secretary to the Queen, have these allegations against Andrew surprised you, or was it to type based upon your experience?
Well, it's not surprised me, and it's a bit to type, because Andrew has and did have a reputation, probably still has a reputation. That's why he hasn't said anything, of being arrogant and bombastic and rude. You name it, he is it. I'm not surprised any of this at all. He thought that, like a lot of MPs, that he was untouchable. You know, we had the MPs' expenses scandal all those years ago. They thought they were untouchable. Certain members of the royal family, not all of them, but certainly Andrew, thinks he's untouchable. I think the others are very sensible and know that they're not untouchable. They know that they're on a tightrope, and the monarchy can go either way. In relation to what the people want. People are happy with a monarchy. It is teetering on the edge of that tightrope, but at the moment the monarchy is reasonably secure. It just has one bad apple in the basket. That basket has been removed from the centre of monarchy, and that basket has now got to be emptied, and he's got to stand up and be counted.
I will tell you, Dickie, that a couple of my callers and texters, and Daniel leaving a voice note, has suggested that the King should step in. Very concerned about the direction of the country, illegal immigration, this crisis around Andrew. They'd like to see a more proactive and engaged Monarch. Take a listen to this voice note from Daniel.
Good morning, Mark. It's Daniel from Epsom here. I've written to Prince William and I've said to him, William, unless you get involved over the immigration crisis that we're suffering in Britain at the moment, your son George will end up reigning over a third world toilet where all the actual native British people have left. What will you be reigning over? Nothing. Like Mad Max territory. Like be completely third world from floor to ceiling. They need to get involved and speak for the British majority now, before it's too late.
And of course, Dickie, the King will have seen the front page of the Sun newspaper. Exclusive asylum fast, 500k phone compo for migrants. At what point does the King or does the Prince of Wales become so concerned about the direction of the country that they step in?
It's a very interesting point, and your caller, I actually had logged on into the station and heard that call. It's a very difficult one in that the last time a constitutional monarch interfered with Parliament and with political business, he had his head disconnected from his shoulders. We're talking about Charles I in 1649. Constitutionally, the monarch is not allowed to interfere in politics. He's not allowed to express a political opinion. The King, when he was Prince of Wales, sailed very close to the wind in terms of political expression. He got away with it because he wasn't the King, he wasn't the sovereign, he was Prince of Wales. But the sovereign cannot do that, and Parliament will make sure that he doesn't do that. So, you know, with due respect to all your viewers, please don't expect too much of the King at the moment, because he is just not allowed to. Government were not allowed to. It doesn't matter what government is in power, what party is in power, he's just constitutionally not allowed to tread that political line.
What about dissolving Parliament and provoking a snap election, Dickie?
Yeah, well, we had that with Boris Johnson, didn't we, when he was trying to delay a debate on Brexit. It didn't work then. He can't just step in and prorogue Parliament. He has to take the advice of his Prime Minister. That's the only way he can act. If he acts arbitrarily, he might not in 2026. In 1649, if he'd done it, he would have had his second head disconnected from his shoulder. He can't do it. It has to be on the advice of the Prime Minister, and that ain't coming anytime soon.
Well, Dickie, as the doyen of royal journalism, I hope that your head stays attached to your shoulder for the foreseeable, because we need your wisdom, experience and knowledge. My thanks to Dickie Arbiter, the Queen's former press secretary. Your calls next.
Breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Yeah. Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:54, just cleaning up the studio because the Queen of Talk, Julia Hartley-Brewer, live at 10. So I've got the wet wipes out, and let me tell you, I'm no wet wipe. What would I do if I ran the world? Well, I would scrap net zero because China, India and America are not doing it. I would reduce taxes so that we could have national income to get the debt down and pay for the doctors and nurses. What else would I do as cleaning up this country? I would close the border, and I would quite happily be even less popular than the Iranian, Russian or North Korean government in order to keep those boats at bay. Stop the boats. Zero illegal immigration is not just the goal, the expectation of any proper country. That's what I would do. Will it happen? We shall see. This is a voice note from Ian. Take it away, Ian.
Morning, Mark. Ian from Hemel Hempstead. The phone compensations, let's call it that, is just another byproduct of the ECHR, which Starmer has in his DNA. I think Starmer needs to start looking at his legacy, and the best thing he could do, the best way he would be remembered, is if he called a general election for the good of the country, came out and said, we've messed up, hands up, I'm calling an election, I'm really sorry. That way, in a few years' time, people might think better of him. They might even forgive him to a point for seeing the error of his ways. Anyway, great show.
Thank you, Ian. What a lovely idea. I think if Starmer provoked a snap election and said, look, I'm out of here, we've messed up, I think there would be some kind of medal that I would campaign for the guy to get, and all would be forgiven. Because what we need, Ian, is change, don't we? We need the wiping out of the entire political public sector establishment. Steve has left a voice note on illegal immigrants receiving compensation because their phones were taken.
Mark, it's Steve from Manchester. Great show, by the way, and shocking about those compensation payments to migrants. That's just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, if the police suspected me of something, might take my phone off me, I wouldn't get compensation for it. I wouldn't get it back until the end of the investigation. And if I'm found guilty of anything, I wouldn't get the phone back at all. It would be destroyed.
Spot on. Cannot disagree with a word of that, Steve. Delighted to say that Peter is in Liverpool. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning. You were talking about apprenticeships, and I can only give you my experience of an apprenticeship from 67 to 72, and that was in the days when construction companies used to look after their own futures. They took on every trade, they paid for every trade, they sent you to college, even sent me on outward bound courses when you did well at college. But now, ever since the government took over, got involved with training people, you don't get the skills that we used to get.
Completely right. Leave it to the private sector. They are investing in people and they want to get the best out of them.
But they're all saying they can't afford to train apprentices. But you look at the earnings of the top bosses of the construction companies.
Yeah.
How much are they making in profits?
They're pulling in millions, aren't they?
Yeah. And a guy I used to work with, I mean, I was a brickie, but the guy I used to work with used to say, we can build houses for people, but we can't own one. And back in them days, I couldn't get a mortgage as a bricklayer.
Yeah, and you know what? The world has changed. Peter, thank you for raising that point. Wouldn't it be nice if we went back to an education system that had a connection between your education and the ability to get a job at the end of it? 9:58, Julia Hartley-Brewer is live at 10. Good morning.
Hello, I'm here. I want to know, why are you wearing an EU tie?
Well,
it's
because
blue, yellow tie today.
I want us back in. I love the customs union. Have you seen that if we go back in the customs union, it's 40 billion quid it'll cost us.
Yeah, you don't. It's hilarious. I really want them to. You keep going with that campaign. If you think the British people are doing that, it's great. I know you've been talking, by the way, about these migrants getting their phones confiscated and getting compensation for it. What on earth? What on earth is going? If this is not the final wake-up call, I mean, the rapes aren't enough for people.